Blinking through the haze, our dude wakes up completely clueless, but reality crashes down fast. He is trapped dead center in a brutal gladiator pit. Staring him down is a massive psycho called Butcher, and the crowd is losing their minds over this unhinged killing machine. With zero hesitation, the towering giant shadows over our boy, hefting a colossal warhammer, and brings it crashing down. The Colosseum erupts, absolutely certain our hero just got flattened into a pancake. But as the debris clears, the psycho is left utterly shook. Our main character is chilling right on top of the massive weapon, without a single scratch. Sparks fly as he channels raw mana straight into his blade. Before the big guy can even blink, he launches off, blurring past him to execute a flawlessly lethal strike. The giant's lifeless corpse slumps into the dirt. Suddenly, the stadium explodes into a massive hype train for our boy, well, except for the salty elites who just blew massive bags betting against him. So who exactly is this absolute menace? And how did a god-tier Blade Master end up fighting for scraps in a death ring? Rewind a bit. Hellish fiends push humanity back into their absolute last refuge, Ailey City, and mercilessly slaughter every single person. Colin Hall is the absolute last man standing, practically running on fumes. After surviving sheer hell, he carved through these monsters as the most overpowered swordmaster in history. But right now, even his insane stats cannot flip this game over. The demonic boss towering over him just laughs, roasting him for still throwing hands when everyone else is already 6 feet under. Yet in its own twisted mind, the monster respects his hustle, deciding to toss him a sick little prize by letting him pick his own execution style. While our battered hero watches his entire world burn to ash, his mind spaces out, flashing back to the exact moment this whole apocalypse kicked off. Exactly 1 year ago, these abyssal freaks crash-landed into their reality with zero warning signs. With humanity completely power-crept, the Horde absolutely bulldozed through city after city, without breaking a sweat, marching straight for the capital. The royal guards went full try-hard to hold the line. But these regular guys with zero mana were basically cannon fodder against magical beasts. Sure, magic is a thing here, but the catch, it is totally gatekept by the snobby aristocrats. These rich kids always flexed like they were the main characters destined to save the world. But their trash-tier unpolished spells completely folded against even the lowest level mobs. Colin suddenly thinks back to that cursed grimoire, a legendary cheat item that let anyone cast spells completely bypassing the royal bloodline rules. But it eats him alive that he found it way too late, realizing this entire tragedy could have been totally avoided if he just got the drop on it earlier. Snapping back to reality, the boss demon presses him again, demanding his execution preference. The freak casually drops options like slicing him into pieces or incinerating his flesh until he is just a pile of dust. Colin, though, he refuses to fold. Staring death in the face, he straight up tells the monster to shut its mouth. He goes all in, launching himself for one last do-or-die strike, but the demon deflects the blade like swatting a pesky fly. Never losing his momentum, Colin pivots flawlessly, locking his target dead on the beast's chest, zeroing in on its core, but the villain jerks back by a hair, immediately trash-talking him, claiming that basic sword skills are an absolute joke here. Before he can finish flexing, though, the demon freezes, noticing that the boy actually drew blood and left a nasty gash. Colin smirks, totally agreeing that vanilla attacks would never scratch a boss. Turns out he is packing a cursed artifact, a high-risk weapon that literally eats his own health bar to crank out massive damage. With his secret out, the absolute madman blitzes the demon again, throwing himself right back into the meat grinder. He matches the boss step for step, parrying hits like an absolute equal, locking blades without giving up a single inch. The brutal dance goes on until Colin finally spots the perfect micro window. In a blinding flash, he cleaves the fiend's hand right off its arm. That critical hit instantly sends the monster into a blind rage. Seething with fury, the boss scoffs at his so-called cursed sword and physically grabs the razor-sharp steel with his bare grip. Dead in the eyes, he tells our boy that this boss fight could have actually gone his way if he had popped that ultimate skill for a stealth ambush. He brands him a total loser for fumbling his one-win condition before shattering the blade into a million pieces. Giving zero time to breathe, the boss instantly spams a blazing inferno spell that completely nukes our hero backward. Colin violently crashes into the dirt, grinding his teeth through the agonizing burn, realizing that even his strongest sacrifice barely made a dent, and the nightmare monster is already rushing back in for the kill. The demon hoists him up by the collar like he weighs absolutely nothing. It taunts the broken warrior, laughing that he traded his entire life just to sever a single arm. Bleeding out and hovering at death's door, Colin whispers a final apology to his fallen squad for breaking his promise. The monster lands a brutal finishing blow, leaving his body completely drenched, but But as the crimson drops pool on the floor, they seep straight into the pages of a forbidden grimoire. And deep inside the relic, a dormant power violently sparks to life. Suddenly, our guy jolts awake. Frantically scanning his surroundings, he is completely bewildered, muttering, "Wait, where am I?" Just then, an eerie voice echoes out of nowhere, making him snap his head around to pinpoint the source. Floating right there is the forbidden grimoire, straight up talking to him. It reveals that his dripping blood broke its seal, and as a reward, it is going to trigger a regression, throwing him back in time for a massive... Colin tightly clenches his trembling fists the second he hears the word regression. This is the ultimate second chance he has been begging the universe for. Recognizing it as a total cheat code, he instantly locks in the deal. The artifact practically hums with satisfaction, promising to stick by his side as his ultimate cheat sheet to master hardcore magic. The endgame, wiping every last demon off the face of the earth and sending them straight back to hell. Right then, a glowing hurricane of pages explodes from the binding, swirling around him as a shadowy silhouette materializes dead in his face. The grimoire snaps shut. The phantom figure grips the cover tightly, and just like that, the timeline completely resets. Smash cut to a grimy coliseum. The stands are absolutely roaring, chanting a single name, the Butcher. Our boy blinks, totally disoriented by the heavy sword and battered shield in his hands. He struggles to process why he is standing in the middle of a brutal slave pit until reality smacks him in the face. He actually time traveled. Judging by the deafening jeers, Colin just tanked a devastating strike from the arena's juggernaut, the Butcher, and miraculously stayed on his feet. Up in the VIP box, the Coliseum's sleazy owner, Viscount Thrace, smugly twirls his mustache. He glares down at the peasants, viewing the fighters as nothing but disposable meat to line his fat pockets. In his twisted mind, human lives are just cheap entertainment for the elite, literally worthless pawns meant to bleed for views. The brawl ramps up. The mob endlessly screams for the Butcher, while the Viscount leers, hyped out of his mind. He is totally cocky, assuming the script is going flawlessly, and Colin is just a pathetic warm-up dummy meant to get crushed. But massive plot twist. Instead of getting flattened into a pancake, Colin flawlessly weaves past the lethal swing and disrespectfully pins the giant's massive blade to the dirt with a single dominant stomp. Back in the original timeline, Colin was trapped here, a helpless slave gladiator locked in a death match with zero way out. Except this time, the energy coursing through his veins feels insane. He realizes he can channel raw magic. Did the grimoire literally fuse with his soul? Smirking at the realization, he launches his counterattack, taking absolute control of his destiny. With terrifying fluid precision, Colin blitzes forward, his blade flashes, and violently decapitates the hulking Butcher in one clean savage sweep. Right then and there, he vows to unlock the grimoire's maximum potential. Because this time around, he refuses to let humanity get butchered by demonic. Glaring up at the corrupt aristocrats who rigged this blood sport, he gets a harsh reality check. As a nameless slave, trying to flip the entire timeline is practically a joke. Grounding himself, he realizes he needs to play the long game. Phase 1. Infiltrate the prestigious Hall household, exactly mirroring his past life, and reclaim his title as Colin Hall. A dark memory flashes. In his original run, he was brutally blackmailed and ordered to purposely throw this exact match. The irony: the desperate peasants actually dumped their life savings on him, praying he could miraculously slaughter the noble's prized champion, the Butcher. But that slimy Viscount Thrace had rigged it so Colin would be painfully executed just to hype up the snobby elites. Not anymore. Our boy is hijacking this spotlight to catch the eye of the territory's apex predator, Marquis Darius Hall. It is the ultimate shortcut into the bloodline. Flexing his sudden victory, he savagely trashes the arena bosses for being totally pathetic, and aggressively yells at them to drop the next victim into the pit. Up in the VIP lounge, things are getting spicy. Furious nobles are ruthlessly roasting Viscount Thrace since he sweet-talked them into dropping massive bags of gold on a gladiator who just lost his head. Sweating bullets, the Viscount frantically tries to play it cool, desperately gaslighting his wealthy guests into believing this total bloodbath is still part of his match. Trying to cool down the raging aristocrats across the room, Marquis Darius locks his eyes on Colin, completely hooked. Turning to his trusted right-hand man, Cornell, he demands a breakdown of that insane finishing blow. Cornell doesn't hold back, admitting that the kids pack some serious heat, and from what he has seen, it blew past anything a standard Imperial grunt could pull off. This just hypes Darius up even more, especially since the kid actually had the guts to blatantly ignore the Viscount's commands. Speaking of the Viscount, the guy is still sweating bullets trying to manage the outraged elites. He desperately promises them that the kid is going to get absolutely shredded in the next match. But all his pathetic backtracking and fake bravado crash and burn the second Colin one-shots his next challenger before the guy's boots even touch the arena dirt. The VIP crowd totally loses it, realizing they just got played, forcing the sweating Viscount into total panic mode. Throwing the rulebook out the window, he orders the guards to unleash the entire gladiator roster on the kid like a pack of rabid dogs. Cornell and Marquis Darius just lean forward, glued to the spectacle, dying to see how the rookie survives this impossible death trap. With more than 6 hulking fighters rushing him, Colin flashes back to the Marquis' old dream, a utopia where magic belonged to everyone. In his past life, he totally fumbled that inherited mission, but this time around, he swears on his soul that he is going to force that vision into reality, whatever the cost. Our guy knows that just bodying a handful of random thugs is not going to score him an invite to the Marquis' inner circle, so he screams at the mob, daring all of them to rush him at once. The bloodthirsty squad immediately swarms in from every angle, aiming to box him in, but Colin, he weaves through their chaotic strikes like water launching himself into the air as he readies his steel for a massive counterattack. The second his boots hit the ground, he effortlessly executes 3 attackers, carving through their throats with a single flawless sweep. Spinning their own dropped weapons against the survivors, he drops 2 more guys without even breaking a sweat. Locking eyes with the last man standing, he casually launches his blade through the air. The steel blasts straight through the fighter's chest, tearing right into the VIP stands, missing the Viscount's scalp by actual millimeters before slamming deep into the stone wall behind his throne. Thrace instantly breaks into a dead sweat, entirely rattled by his near-death experience, and the utter embarrassment cuts him deep. His face contorts into pure rage as he silently vows to make the arrogant brat suffer for disrespecting him like that. Catching this whole circus, the Marquis bursts out laughing, openly roasting the Viscount for getting totally clowned in his own rigged arena. The surrounding snobs instantly rally behind the Viscount, barking back at Darius and fiercely arguing that filthy bottom feeders should never get a long leash. A few even push the envelope aggressively, screaming for Colin's head on a silver platter, instantly wiping the smirk right off the Marquis' face. The vibe in the room turns ice cold, as Darius brutally calls them out for their toxic out-of-touch superiority complexes. This clapback just triggers the Viscount even more, prompting him to step up and openly trash the Marquis' progressive mindset. He aggressively reminds him that the divine bestowed magic upon humanity a millennium ago, cementing the ultimate social ladder that crowned the nobility as heaven's hand-picked representatives on earth. Pointing his glowing staff straight at the Marquis, he dares to ask if Darius actually plans to wage war against the divine system itself. Catching this threat, Colin crashes the party, turning a spicy argument into an absolute powder keg. He casually hops up and takes a seat right in the VIP section, like he owns the place, sending the terrified elites into a complete meltdown. While the crowd is screaming and scrambling for the royal security, Colin zeroes in on Thrace, aiming his bloodied blade right at his face, daring him to prove that he is actually some untouchable messenger of God. Thrace takes the bait, and both of them step straight into the blood-stained ring. The upper-class crowd is sitting pretty 100% certain that the Viscount is about to effortlessly squash the so-called bug standing before him. They kick back with cocky grins, while Darius suddenly looks visibly stressed out. Viscount Thrace kicks things off, spitting venomous trash talk while channeling a high-speed wind spell. But right as the spell charges up, the ancient grimoire echoes inside Colin's head, and a slick glowing system interface pops up in his vision, exposing Thrace's actual stats. Turns out this so-called elite is basically a total noob-tier mage with way more ego than actual firepower. Thrace finally lets his wind edge rip, firing off a brutal blast designed to slice everything in its way into ribbons. The rich snobs bust out laughing, literally betting money on exactly how many chunks Colin's body is about to be chopped into. The crowd places their bets, 7 pieces, maybe 8. Meanwhile, the smug Viscount proudly tells the Marquis to grab some popcorn, ready to prove the massive gap between high society and absolute trash. But Colin, our guy, does not even flinch. Thanks to his ridiculously overpowered magic resistance, his body is basically bulletproof. Big yikes for the noble. Those massive hurricane strikes do absolutely 0 damage, well, except for completely shredding Colin's shirt. The deadly storm completely fizzles out. Colin casually strolls right through the blast zone, closing the distance on Thrace, while the spectators absolutely lose their minds. Panicking, the Viscount scrambles to pull his weapon, but way before that steel even leaves the scabbard, Colin lunges. Bam! He disarms the guy instantly, sending the blade spinning across the arena. Then he presses his own cold steel right against the aristocrat's neck, shutting down the duel right then and there. But just as the dust settles, the system suddenly pings our main character, flashing a major warning that a brand new energy signature just dropped. Creepy pitch black hands erupt from the dirt, violently grabbing the boy and locking him down completely. Turns out the Divine Guards just pulled up to the scene after getting tipped off about the massive brawl. That some lowly slave dared to disrespect the elites. Their sheer aura is absolutely suffocating, and they instantly announce they have arrived to drag the suspect away. The second Colin spots the Divine Guards, it hits him, he is completely screwed. These enforcers hail from the infamous Magic Tower, a ruthless squad obsessed with pure bloodlines, and crushing anyone who dares to defy the elites. Our guy knows damn well these soldiers are top-tier aristocrats themselves, packing raw power that totally dwarfs your average royal. He quickly scans the magical restraints locking him down and instantly realizes he could shatter them in a heartbeat, but he chooses to play it cool. Flexing his true strength right now would just put a massive target on his back. Instead, he puts on a masterclass performance, pretending that Hal is the one barking orders to dispel the binding spell right this second. That totally stuns the room. The Divine Guards and the Viscount freeze in sheer confusion, while the bystanders erupt into frantic whispers. Rumors fly that no one has ever heard of the Marquis having a second son. Colin just grits his teeth, praying his insane bluff actually pays off. He is banking on one golden rule these elite enforcers would never dare. He is literally betting his entire survival on this one loophole. Meanwhile, Thrace is absolutely losing his mind. How dare some peasant drag the sacred title of nobility through the mud, using it as a cheap get-out-of-jail-free card? Nah, the Viscount isn't having it. He readies his blade fully prepared to execute this guy right then and there. But suddenly, a booming voice shatters the tension vibrating through the massive arena. Enter Lord Darius. The sheer terrifying aura dripping off this man paralyzes every single person in their tracks. Scrambling to save face, Thrace completely switches his tone, assuring the imposing lord that he was simply taking out the trash. Smack out of absolutely nowhere, the Marquis brutally backhands Colin straight across the jaw. He spits out pure venom, disgusted that a filthy subordinate would dare taint his pristine bloodline. The Divine Guards. Their jaws are literally... For a split second, everyone actually thought he swooped in to save the day. Thrace is just standing there, glitching out, completely failing to process this insane plot twist. Darius then violently hoists our guy up by the throat, snarling that back-breaking labor at the Merchant Guild will definitely beat some respect into him. Our MC doesn't even flinch. He just takes it quietly as those heavy leather gloves squeeze his windpipe. The Marquis puts on a massive show of rage, shouting about how this brat... But deep down, Colin is completely chilling. Every single piece is falling perfectly into place exactly as he orchestrated. Wrapping up his Oscar-worthy performance, Darius turns and formally apologizes to the Viscount for his quote-unquote son's reckless behavior. You can practically hear the gears grinding in Thrace's tiny brain, trying to figure out when the heck these two became family. Leaning fully into the bit, Colin hits him with the ultimate innocent act. He whispers that it's not his fault. The bad man insulted his daddy first. Darius instantly snaps at him to zip it. Pivoting back to the Divine Guards, he swears on his honor that he'll handle the kid's punishment personally. He waves them off, sending a crystal-clear message, shows over, get out. But Viscount Thrace? Oh, he is way too unhinged to drop this. There is zero chance he's letting a higher-up use this laughable family skit to snatch away his absolute favorite target. With bloodshot eyes radiating pure lethal intent, Thrace screams that Colin is meeting his maker today, by his own hands right this second. In his blind rage, he actually levels his blade straight at the ruling lord of the territory, just to prove he isn't bluffing. Our boy is practically dying of laughter inside, while brilliantly checkmate his own life. Yep, Thrace just aimed cold steel right at the undisputed. He was completely ready to step up and defend his turf personally if push came to shove, while also diving headfirst into the brutal selection. With that mic drop, he points out the obvious. This guy just straight up spat in the face of both the Lord and the entire Divine Guard. Colin basically tells this walking skeleton he just committed high treason live and in HD for the whole arena to see. Those brutal words instantly paralyze Thrace, freezing the old-timer dead in his tracks right in the dirt of the Colosseum. Totally humiliated in front of his own hype squad, the pathetic noble violently shakes, desperately trying to backtrack his mess. But the Divine Guard captain, he's already made the call, brushing the whole chaotic mess off. As a massive misunderstanding, the commander immediately orders his men to slash Colin's chains. He even drops a surprisingly polite apology for the absolute circus show. Pivoting sharply toward Thrace, he delivers the ultimate death blow, announcing he's personally escalating this entire clown act to the Magic Tower. Thrace straight up collapses to the dirt, totally paralyzed by the sheer terror of his impending doom. The council owns his fate now, while our boy finally exhales, letting the massive adrenaline crash hit him. But don't get it twisted, the Divine Guard captain isn't blind. He quietly whispers to his squad that Colin is giving off major red flags. He demands a massive deep dive background check on this kid. One clueless rookie blinks, asking why they'd ever spy on Lord Darius's flesh and blood. The commander glares back, snapping that there's zero chance the heir to the lean territory would walk around completely unrecognized. Clearly pissed off by the blatant cap, he makes it his personal mission to expose that this gladiator boy is 100% an imposter. Meanwhile, his soldiers are totally mind-blown by how Colin didn't even flinch or sweat while locked in iron chains. They figure he's got to have some insane hidden ties to the Marquis, considering the VIP swooped in out of nowhere to save his neck. Even though the captain can't connect all the dots just yet, he orders his elite squad to stalk the suspect's every move. Smash cut to a lavish carriage, tearing through a heavily wooded sunlit trail. Inside the cabin, the Marquis is practically howling with laughter, absolutely living for the Oscar-worthy performance Colin pulled off in the arena. The chaotic energy settles, and Colin drops his guard, genuinely thanking the old man for pulling him from the jaws of death. Turns out, right after the bloody brawl, the Lord dispatched his loyal butler Cornell to buy out Colin's contract before any other noble could snipe him. Leaning back, the Marquis finally drops the act, deeply fascinated by the kid's raw, insane talent. He grills Colin, demanding to know if he's ever spilled blood on the actual front lines. The old warrior's razor-sharp instincts already caught the truth. Colin's brutal combat flow wasn't something you just pick up on the streets. The deadly fluid execution screamed either hardcore warzone trauma or a lifetime of brutal conditioning under a master. Our boy's eyes dim as he sinks back into a dark, traumatic past. He painfully reveals that after his parents flatlined, his very own neighbors threw him to the wolves, selling him into the meat grinder of slavery as a little kid. Years down the line, a rogue noble bought his freedom and drilled foundational magic into his head. That exact same legend dragged him through the hellish training just so he could survive real blood-soaked combat. Raw, heavy grief floods Colin's gaze as he chokes out that this mysterious noble was literally his real dad in every way that mattered. When the man finally took his last breath, he handed down a massive, impossible dream he could never conquer himself. Pure fire ignites in Colin's eyes. He fiercely vows to rip through anything standing in his way to make that dream a reality. He doesn't even care if it costs him his life. That insane ride-or-die loyalty completely blindsides Lord Darius, hitting the old man way harder than he ever anticipated. But what's really scrambling the Marquis's brain is the crazy reality that Colin actually tanked the Viscount's lethal windblade armed with nothing but entry-level spell work. This kid's titanium willpower, hammered into perfection through endless death matches, completely wins Darius over. Right then and there, the old lord finally spots the ultimate wild card. The absolute only soul crazy enough to carry his own lifelong, impossible crusade. The sheer gravity of that revelation hits so hard, the old man just stares out the window in absolute silence. Cornell's sharp voice violently snaps him back to reality, announcing they've finally pulled up to the drop zone. Darius's estate is an absolute jaw-dropper. We're talking a sprawling billionaire-tier fortress flexing right in the middle of an endlessly lush elite garden. Booting the carriage door open, the Lord casually drops the bomb. Colin is officially untethered, a free man. But don't celebrate just yet. No longer having a price tag on his neck definitely doesn't mean he gets a free pass. They're surviving in a ruthless dog-eat-dog universe where only apex predators breathe and everyone pays rent in blood. Whipping around, Darius shoots it straight. The hand-holding stops right here, right now. It's totally on Colin to prove he's got the absolute grit to survive the brutal back-breaking grind, locked and loaded for his future. Unbothered and icy cool, our boy locks eyes with the future's zero hesitation in his stance. Darius smirks, laying out some crazy high stakes for his legacy. Looking dead at him, he drops the official title, Colin Hall. With those two words, the Marquis locks him in as his legit adopted heir. Boom! Phase 1 of the ultimate comeback arc is officially in the bag. In this twisted society, highborn elites wouldn't be caught dead marrying a commoner. Power demands pedigree. Mix with the lower class and you supposedly poison the bloodline, bleeding out the family's influence piece by piece. The Hall dynasty takes this toxic obsession with pure genetics to a whole new level. But smack in the middle of this snobby bloodline sits one massive glitch in the system. Enter Lord Darius Hall. He couldn't care less about their elitist garbage, mostly because his own mother was a lowly maid, making him the ultimate illegitimate outcast. Growing up, the high society treated him like actual dirt. Vicious rumors and nasty side-eyes tracked his every single footstep through the estate. But did he crack under the pressure? Not a chance. He utterly demolished their prejudice by grinding harder and proving he was running purely on raw talent and grit. he clawed his way to the top to become the undisputed Marquis of the Line territory. Strolling down those insanely lavish corridors alongside Colin, where a man comes from means absolutely zero. Pure, unfiltered strength and bulletproof confidence are the only things that actually move. Looking Colin dead in the eye, the Lord makes a crazy flex. He promises to hand over insane clout, massive wealth, or literally any craving his heart desires. But there are absolutely zero handouts in this house. If our boy wants to taste the high life, he better bleed for it and prove his worth. Flashing a deadly arrogant smirk, Darius dares the kid to leave everything on the table and go completely all in on his dreams. Realizing the sky is the limit, Colin doesn't even blink. He shoots his shot and straight up demands to know if a noble title is on the menu. That wild question literally paralyzes the room. Both the Marquis and his butler freeze in their tracks, completely blindsided by that insane level of ambition. A second later, the Lord absolutely loses it, roaring with laughter. Instead of getting triggered, he loves the audacity. Flashing a wicked grin, he throws down the gauntlet. He tells the kid to step up and try snatching the crown right off his head if he really wants that smoke. That chaotic response is exactly what Colin expected. For Darius, raw capability will always crush royal blood. That hardcore merit over bloodline mindset makes him a total anomaly in the Hall family. It is also the exact reason his own relatives despise his guts. Those pathetic nepo babies running on old family money absolutely seethe at the fact that he is gatekeeping their path to real power. Thanks to that, the biggest threats breathing down his neck aren't rival lords. They are the vipers sleeping under his own roof. Speaking of vipers, his eldest son Fried and his second wife Katrina Williams suddenly slide into the room wearing incredibly fake plastic smiles. As they overly hype up his homecoming, Darius dryly points out that he never actually announced he was rolling back into town, and chuckles sarcastically, noting that keeping secrets in this snake pit of a mansion is practically impossible. His wife plays the innocent card, giggling that rumors simply catch fire the second a VI. Then she casually drops a bomb. She claims a little birdie chirped all about his aggressive face-off against Thrace over a random slave boy. The temperature in the room plummets as Darius glares at her with pure disgust. Unfazed, the woman flashes a wickedly toxic smirk, playing the role of a harmless, sweet angel to perfection. Meanwhile, Darius sweeps his icy gaze over the personal servants trailing behind her. Every single one of them is a rat feeding her his every move. Colin locks eyes with the woman too, knowing full well she is the absolute final boss hiding in plain sight. In his previous timeline, this absolute menace single-handedly derailed his ultimate endgame. After she disposed of her husband, Colin got completely wrecked by her toxic mind games too. Because she wasn't just a wife, she was the undisputed heir to a loaded massive empire. That crazy generational wealth gives her the insane leverage to boss everyone around like a first wife, even though she is officially only wife number 2. Her master plan? Dead simple. She wants to bulldoze everything in her path to crown her spoiled kid Fried as the supreme ruler of House Hall. Back in his past life, she played him like an absolute fiddle. But this time around, our boy refuses to let that disaster replay. Exuding pure, unbothered main character energy, he struts right up to the duo, sarcastically declaring what a massive honor it is to meet Lady Katrina and Big Bro Fried. Taking it a step further, he cranks his voice up and aggressively brands himself to the room as Colin Hall. He looks them dead in the eye, swearing to grind until his bones break to push the family's empire to the absolute top. Watching a filthy commoner casually drop their sacred last name leaves Fried completely malfunctioning. Right as the brat opens his mouth to absolutely flame Colin, his mother instantly shuts him down with a single raise of her hand. The mastermind decides she wants to rip this kid apart herself. Her face contorts with pure revulsion at the mere thought of some absolute nobody dragging her prestigious family name through the mud. Snapping her attention to Cornell, the Ice Queen demands to know if this trashy new servant needs a brutal crash course in basic hierarchy and respect. Cornell tightly seals his lips, dodging that massive landmine to survive another day. But out of nowhere, Colin straight up hoists his gleaming sword into the air. Without breaking eye contact, he flexes that the legendary surname looks incredibly good on him, especially since the big boss of House Hall gifted it personally. Pushing all their buttons, he dares the raging duo, asking if they seriously want to start a war over a direct order from the Lord himself. Dripping with absolute sarcasm, he smirks and tells them to engrave his name into their memories. Because one day, he is going to hijack the throne, snatch the Lord title, and leave them all choking on his dust. Katrina's cold eyes lock onto him, radiating pure lethal hatred at the absolute audacity. The absolute audacity to just spit out that kind of pure delusion. Meanwhile, her son Fried Hall is absolutely tweaking, looking ready to blast a crater straight through the drywall. But for Lord Darius Hall, Colin's reckless flex is absolute music to his ears. The background staff immediately start throwing shade. To them, the idea of a bought and paid for nobody, even dreaming of snatching the boss title, is pure comedy. To shut down the gossip mill real quick, Lady Katrina Hall drops a single ice-cold clear of her throat. Boom! The entire room flatlines into dead silence in mere seconds. Biting her lip in pure rage, she barks at Colin to check his status and keep his trash mouth glued shut around her. Then the matriarch orders her crew to lock him down immediately. The butlers whip out hidden blades, and even the maids grip their brooms ready to jump him. But right before the vibe turns into a total bloodbath, Lord Darius hits the pause button. He lays it out straight. Colin is not capping. If the kid can actually prove he is built different, the throne is his for the taking. Freed is completely lost, asking what the heck that even means, only to catch a legendary death glare from his old man. Lady Katrina plays it cool, claiming she respects the boss's call, but points out their massive roster of staff. Only the absolute VIPs get to rock the family name. Handing that kind of clout to a random stray is completely unhinged in her eyes. She doubles down, saying there is no way they just hand out free passes. Her counterplay: throw the kid into a trial by fire to see if he is legit. Fail and tradition dictates he gets permanently kicked to the curb, but our guy does not even flinch, letting her know, a reality check, that a little test will not slow his grind. The elitist mom gets deeply triggered, taunting him about chickening out. Instead, Colin flips the script, declaring that literally every worker in the mansion should get to run the exact same gauntlet. Give the whole squad equal odds at bagging that surname. Throwing massive shade at Freed, he casually notes this strategy is way better than just coasting on pure nepotism and tossing the crown to a talentless scrub. That completely shatters Freed's fragile ego. Spiraling into hard denial, he panics over how the golden child is supposed to scrap with the help for his own inheritance. Out of nowhere, Katrina grips his shoulder, grounding him. She reminds him to act his wage and keep it frosty. She whispers that he should never sweat a bunch of literal NPCs when he is literally packing magic. She tells him to just sit back, watch the show, and he nods along without a peep. Bottom line, Lord Darius greenlights the wild idea. The ultimate battle royale kicks off in exactly 1 month. It is a total free-for-all for anyone on the payroll. Until the clock runs out, Colin is stuck grinding on grunt duty, which is literally a massive W for him, giving him zero distractions to completely nerd out over that magic spellbook. Strolling down the hall, Cornell admits the kid has insane riz with his words. He drops some lore saying the big boss is basically under constant surveillance by the upper crust because he refuses to follow the meta. Then he presses Colin to spill the tea. Did he actually serve high society before? Because the sketchy slave guild supposedly snatched him from some absolute middle-of-nowhere war zone. Faster than a blink, Cornell flashes a blade straight to our boy's jugular, hissing about whether it is just pure luck that he spawned into this mansion at the exact second the Lord is hunting for an heir. Colin does not even sweat. He casually asks if the butler is trying to pin a target on his back. He then hits him with raw facts. The slave guild has zero morals when it comes to gaslighting and scams. They literally colluded with a whole Viscount just to secure the bag on one rigged fight. He claps back, asking if Cornell actually thinks those greedy vultures would let him walk so easily if he was secretly a corporate plant. Still entirely paranoid, the butler points out the math ain't mathing. The trader sold him as mid-tier trash, but his footwork screams top-tier predator. See, out here in the Empire, there is a brutal porny scaling system for both spellcasting and blade work. Most folks are hard stuck at the intermediate rank. Breaking past that ceiling is an achievement meant only for absolute prodigies. The rich kids usually dump all their stat points into magic, leaving them completely clueless in a bare-bones knife fight. But god-tier squads like the Divine Guards, they demand a maxed-out dual-class build, lethal magic, and cracked sword skills. Connecting the dots, Cornell wonders if that sleazy merchant fed them fake lore on purpose just to quietly delete the kid from the board. Colin smirks, firing back that if he was an actual undercover op, he would be gunning straight for the throne. The butler squints, totally thrown off, demanding to know what the heck that is even supposed to mean. Our guy breaks it down. A mole's only job is to breach the firewall and exploit vulnerabilities from the inside. So, if he was actually playing double agent, stealing the butler job would have been the ultimate cheat code. From the shadows, he could easily siphon all the boss's dirty secrets without catching any heat. Dropping the mic, our boy offers him a foolproof trade-off. He vows to weaponize his rock-bottom status as a servant, to operate in the shadows and hunt down enemy rats, and in return, he needs Cornell to act as his ultimate inside man. The butler narrows his eyes, questioning if the kid grasps that by pulling this stunt, he'll have the entire nobility out for his blood. Colin doesn't even flinch, hitting back with a stone-cold fact. Massive risks breed massive payouts. If Lord Darius crashes and burns because he played it safe, that inheritance vanishes into thin air anyway. Catching his drift, Cornell finally relaxes, sliding his blade back into the dark. But internally, the butler is reeling. He wonders if this teenager is genuinely power-hungry enough to risk it all for a noble title. He can't deny the kid is terrifyingly lethal and sharper than a tack. Ultimately, Cornell thinks this alliance feels way too much like a trap, convinced Colin is playing 4D chess. Shelving his paranoia for the moment, he motions for our guy to tag along to his new living quarters, the servant dorms. Down in the grime of the workers' wing, Cornell gives our MC a quick tour, offering him the pick of the litter. He breaks down the mansion's brutal hierarchy set by the madam. The elites wait hand and foot on her, the master, and their golden boy, while the mid-tiers get the privilege of actually sleeping inside the main estate. Then there's the bottom of the barrel, banished to these rundown sheds and strictly banned from even breathing near the mansion. The butler rattles off his daily grind, which means hacking firewood, hauling trash, and shoveling horse manure, all for a pathetic 3 copper coins a day. Before dipping out, Cornell drops the heavy reality of the estate's ironclad rules. The absolute golden rule: zero backtalk, absolute blind obedience to the senior staff. Our MC sweeps his gaze across the yard. These guys don't look like maids, they look like hardened street thugs. And he raises an eyebrow, wondering if he's seriously supposed to bow down to criminals. Cornell deadpans, making it clear the madam herself baked this toxic system into the estate. Colin simply shrugs off the warning and turns to the crowd, throwing up a casual greeting, saying he's hyped to join the crew. Instead of a friendly welcome, the mob instantly tears into him, jeering and bowing sarcastically to the future lord of the realm. One beefy guy steps up, sneering. That word travels fast about some arrogant brat clashing with the madam and her precious son. Another goon smirks, cracking his knuckles, promising to personally educate the rookie on estate respect. Things go from 0 to 100 when one thug shatters a glass bottle, brandishing the jagged edge like a dagger. He barks at the MC to drop to his knees and slap himself senseless, demanding he chant that he's thrilled to work with them until they give him the green light. The whole pack howls with laughter, but Colin isn't about to play the victim. He snatches the attacker's finger, and in a blink, the thug's momentum is utterly crushed, getting manhandled like a literal rag doll. Jaws hit the dirt as Colin plants a brutal kick squarely into the guy's chest, launching him across the courtyard. Before their tiny brains can even process the wipeout, the MC casually announces he's done playing nice, and starts dealing out a barrage of slaps to the downed thug, sarcastically echoing the exact same line about looking forward to working together. The rest of the mob snaps. They swarm him with pure murder in their eyes, but Colin's reflexes are on another level. With a flick of the wrist, he slams his sword hilt directly into a goon's face, instantly shutting down the ambush. One thug stumbles backward, spitting out a mouthful of blood and shattered teeth. But before he can even formulate a battle plan, Colin is already a blur of motion. He goes airborne, delivering a flawless flying kick that completely bulldozes another attacker out of frame. As the second guy groggily blinks his eyes open, he wakes up to a nightmare Colin towering over him, cold steel drawn and glinting. Our boy chillingly asks if they're satisfied yet. The terrified thug frantically nods to save his own skin, but the split second Colin turns away, the coward lunges forward with that jagged bottle, screaming for blood. But in the literal blink of an eye, the atmosphere shatters. Colin is frozen in place, his blade already resting in its final stance, not even breaking a sweat. The thug collapses to the dirt, suddenly realizing both of his hands are completely gone. As the guy shrieks in agonizing panic, Colin smoothly sheathes his weapon, glancing back to deadpan if he's satisfied now. Cut to nightfall, and the MC calculates that by this point, he's successfully secured Cornell's loyalty, though honestly the future of this chess game is still totally up in the air. Shaking off the uncertainty, he cracks open his ancient grimoire and grinds through magical theories to level up his raw power. A memory from his past life hits him. Countess Katrina ruthlessly purged the entire Hall family staff the second she secured her marriage to Darius, packing the estate with her own brainwashed loyalists. Because of this massive power grab, her marriage with Darius completely tanked, turning an already toxic relationship into a total war zone. Needing a massive shield to keep the chaos in check, Darius installed his ride-or-die comrade Cornell as head butler. Cornell holds the ultimate trump card. He's the absolute only guy with the muscle to sideline the Countess of the Air. Our guy gets a massive flashback to his past life, remembering how Cornell got brutally wiped out. That assassination basically handed Countess Katrina all the leverage, letting her push her own kid straight for the throne. He realizes that if the head butler had just survived, the entire timeline would have shifted. Colin clicks in. His current rookie tier magic resistance is definitely not going to save his skin. So, it is time to seriously level up. He locks in ready to grind out both defensive shields and heavy-hitting offensive spells. The second he touches the grimoire, boom, the pages explode around him, swirling into a literal paper tornado. Raw magical data gets brute-forced straight into his brain, and instantly he gets hit with a blinding agony. That leaves him completely frozen. It feels like thousands of fire ants are chewing through his veins all at once. The energy surge is totally insane, like his blood bones and very soul are taking a bath in boiling lava. Suddenly, a massive shadowy knight crawls straight out of the pages and actually drops Colin's name. A split second later, the Phantom teleports right behind him, hissing in his ear to just wreck everything, to just give up and bow down. Our guy is sweating bullets under this insane gravity, starting to question if this is actually the true price of a magic build. He remembers an old buddy from his past life claiming that you just have to close your eyes and just vibe with the mana flow to master it. He scoffs, thinking about how painfully easy it must be for those trust fund nobles, inhaling magic like literal oxygen. He can clearly feel just how hopelessly rigged the bloodline gap really is. But whatever. He powers through the agony, slams his hand back onto the book, and vows to conquer this thing no matter what. But right in the middle of his hype speech, something totally bizarre derails his focus and completely catches him off guard. A super creepy sound instantly rings through the void. Cut to the next morning, the servant crew is already up and grinding through their daily crack of dawn chores. When the local bullies spot our MC finally rolling out of bed, one of them immediately starts running his mouth. He starts taunting him, pointing out how insanely chill the MC looks for a guy who just picked a massive fight with the veterans last night. The MC just shrugs and drops a savage reply. He honestly expected to get shanked in his sleep by now, but apparently they lack the guts to even pull that off. Before their brains can even process the absolute disrespect, he casually adds that their little sneak attack would have totally flopped anyway. He hits a massive stretch, lets out a yawn, and complains that his midnight grinding session completely wiped him out. Breakfast definitely comes before chores today. Then he drops the wildest casual flex, saying the all-nighter actually paid off big time. He just straight up unlocked a crazy, rare, eternal tier magic. Before a full-on brawl can pop off the camera, cuts outside the manor. A heavily armed squad is marching through the courtyard, aggressively shoving people aside to clear a path. The servants instantly drop their heads, absolutely terrified, as the VIP squad rolls up. One of the guards barks at everyone to step back for their one-eyed lieutenant. But this one poor dude standing right in the front is lugging a heavy bucket and completely zones out. He misses the cue to move, and a guard instantly boots him hard in the gut. The guy goes flying. The bucket shatters and dirty water splashes right onto the lieutenant's pristine boots. The boss completely freezes, just staring down at the mess. His lackey instantly loses his mind, screaming at the servant for actually daring to ruin the commander's drip. The lieutenant just raises one single finger to shut him up. Total silence. He then slowly strolls over to the violently shaking guy. The servant is literally bawling, spamming apologies, and desperately begging for his life over the clumsy mistake. The boss hits him with a soft, creepy smile. He whispers that it cannot be helped, making it sound for a split second like he is actually letting it slide. But right as the poor dude exhales in relief, the lieutenant's vibe turns absolutely demonic. He coldly states that eyes that fail to read the room are completely useless. In one blindingly fast, brutal swipe, he literally rips the servant's eye straight out of his skull. The guy drops to the dirt, shrieking in pure agony, while the lieutenant coldly makes the servant match his own psycho one-eyed aesthetic. The rest of the crew is shaking, totally paralyzed by the horror and pity, but the lackey immediately barks at them, screaming at them to stop staring and ordering every single person to drop to their knees. But right at that peak tension, our MC just casually strolls right through the bloodbath. He does not even drop his pace, acting like this psychodrama is literally none of his business. His absolutely unbothered stride makes the lackey's brain completely short-circuit. While the guards are standing there glitching out, unsure if they should attack or not, the MC is genuinely miles away in his own head. He is deeply stressing over his breakfast options, considering the servant food here is absolute trash. The battered bully from earlier instantly spots him. He immediately snitches to the boss, pointing out that this is the exact same maniac who chopped his hands off yesterday. He aggressively whispers that our boy was talking to himself all night, making him look like an absolute unpredictable psycho. The lieutenant squints. He easily calculates that this kid is a total wild card, dangerous enough to be a massive problem. Smirking, he calls out to him. Colin finally hits the brakes and glances over, totally unbothered. Deadpan, he asks the guy if he's itching to get his own hands sliced off too. Swiping the blood right off his fingers with a smirk, the lieutenant flexes that his crew isn't anything like those fragile, pampered royals, or the Countess's soft lackeys for that matter. The rest of the guards step up to the plate, laying down their brutal code of payback. It's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth out here. Staring Colin down, they dare him chop off your own arms or let us do the honors. Not a single muscle twitches on Colin's face. Ice cold, he fires back with his own brutal ultimatum. He tells the squad they've got two choices: forfeit your hands or drop your heads. But the lieutenant just flashes a wicked grin, stepping back to let someone else do the dirty work. He drags out a heavy hitter, a former underground arena champion, and tells our boy that this absolute unit is his opponent. The second Colin locks eyes with the guy, reality hits him like a truck. It's a reserve guard, and a mid-tier servant named Daku. Cold sweat drips down Colin's face. Of all places, he never expected to bump into his literal best friend in a mess like this. Memories flood back. Daku was his day one, the most ride-or-die guy, a guy he'd ever known. In his past life before turning back time, they practically lived in the trenches together, slaughtering massive beasts back to back. But in this timeline, the poor dude is just standing there as a low-key servant, looking completely battered and bruised. Gripping his hilt, Colin tries to push his buttons, mocking him for throwing down just to protect a total scrub. Unfazed, Daku lifts his blade and aims it right at his old buddy. Clapping back that he's just following orders, rookies bow to the veterans. Colin instantly calls cap on that toxic mindset, asking why the hell they're staying quiet while being treated like absolute garbage. That harsh truth actually makes the former slave freeze for a split second. Colin doesn't miss a beat. He exploits that tiny mental glitch, snags the weapon right out of Daku's grip, and closes the gap in a blur, jamming the steel straight against the lieutenant's throat. The lackeys are totally paralyzed, minds blown by his insane speed. Even Daku is left shook, staring at his empty hands, realizing he got disarmed before he could even blink. The punk leader is practically shaking in his boots, but he somehow scrapes together enough nerve to swallow his fear threateningly, asking our boy if he even knows who he's messing with. He flexes that Lord Freed hand, picked him, warning Colin that crossing him is a guaranteed death wish. In dead silence, Colin slowly pulls the blade away. Thinking he just won, the smug lieutenant fixes his collar and instantly switches back to his cocky persona, barking that Colin isn't walking out of here without bleeding first. To twist the knife, the creep signals his goons to make an example out of Daku. Zero hesitation. The grunts rip a brutal gash right across the poor guy's spine, spilling fresh blood. The boss spits out that Daku is useless trash and orders his squad to go all out. Laughing like psychos, the minions torture him, even pinning his hand down with a dagger as payback for blowing his mission. They taunt him for fumbling his one and only shot at redemption. Watching his best friend get violated like this, Colin's inner demon fully wakes up. In a flash of lethal rage, he obliterates both of the henchmen, severing their heads and dropping their lifeless bodies to the dirt. With his back turned to the lieutenant, the slimy boss thinks he spots a blind spot and scrambles into an attack stance, getting ready to one-shot our hero. But the guy's footwork is total garbage, and before he can even swing, his blade is instantly shattered into pieces. Colin shoots him a dark glare, warning that the next slash is taking his head, not his steel. But just as our boy winds up for the fatal execution, Daku suddenly blocks the strike out of nowhere. Throwing his battered body in front of his toxic boss, Daku stands his ground like a human shield. Playing the brainwashed meathead, he barks at Colin to stop racking up a death toll and show some damn respect to the hierarchy, even while blood gushes from the giant hole in his own hand. Refusing to hurt his day one homie, Colin backs off and spares the lieutenant's miserable life, ordering the remaining trash to scram. As Daku silently sheathes his weapon, our boy demands answers, asking why he's playing the victim, when he's packing way more power and could have easily mopped the floor with those weaklings. Snapping back, Daku fiercely tells Colin that he's already a walking corpse for rebelling against the higher-ups. Because of that, he's totally done talking to a dead man. Yet right after saving his boss's skin, instead of thanking the guy for literally saving his life, the ungrateful lieutenant flips the script, violently shoving Daku's face straight into a puddle. He screams at the boy for just standing by earlier, whining that it made him look like a total clown in front of the whole squad. Swallowing his pride, Daku chokes out an apology, only to get brutally curb-stomped into the dirt right after. Sucking up to the boss, one of the lackeys asks if they're actually letting Colin off the hook. Chuckling like a maniac, the lieutenant whispers a sinister order. It's time to spread a deadly rumor. This kid practically just declared open season on the entire senior staff. The boss instantly orders his crew to strip the kid of his rank and toss him straight into solitary confinement. Later on, Colin corners Daku again completely baffled as to why the guy keeps eating dirt instead of fighting back. But the poor dude just clenches his jaw, swallowing his pride in dead silence. Cut to lunchtime. The top-tier servants are living large, stuffing their faces with an absolute feast. Meanwhile, some mid-level worker will not stop yapping to her work bestie about a crazy dream where she finally scored a promotion, practically vibrating with hype just picturing it. On the flip side, the bottom-tier rookies get absolutely nothing but a sad bowl of watery broth. Not exactly a 5-star meal, yet magically nobody breathes a single word of complaint. Right on cue, our boy struts into the cafeteria, rolling straight up to the serving line. He glances around totally clueless as to why the whole room is staring holes into his soul. The head cook just straight up dumps his soup on the floor, laughing in his face. No grinding, no grub. That is the rule. Colin does not even blink. Instead, he casually pivots and marches right over to the VIP section. He steps right into their exclusive turf, shoving a couple of high-ranking snobs out of his way, while they absolutely lose their minds. 0 drops of sweat given. He strolls right up to the massive buffet spread and shamelessly snatches a fresh croissant. Plus, a juicy drumstick for good measure. Suddenly, head butler Cornell intercepts him, growling that this zone is strictly for VIPs only. The elites start screaming for his head, begging the butler to teach this trash a permanent lesson. But plot twist, instead of throwing down the hammer, the head butler pulls a total 180, tossing out an incredibly smooth excuse to defuse the bomb. He loudly declares that the kid is just a clueless newbie, and hey, rookies are bound to mess up, right? He orders Colin to follow him, leaving the salty elites absolutely seething in the background. Once they are out of earshot, Cornell drops the act. He completely grills the kid about the whole absolute obedience rule, demanding to know why he keeps playing with fire. Colin claps right back. He casually drops the fact that the big boss, the Marquise, literally promised that pure talent gets rewarded. Forget the hierarchy. The kid smirks, claiming his skills are more than cracked enough to earn him a decent plate of food, which is exactly why he decided to just serve himself. Impressed, the butler strikes a deal. He will bankroll the kid's entire lifestyle, but there is a massive catch. Colin has to hunt down a rat secretly lurking inside the mansion. Right on cue, hunting horns start blaring in the distance. Looks like the Marquise is gearing up to hit the royal hunting grounds. Word on the street is that some seriously sketchy stuff has been going down in the pitch-black woods nearby. So the Lord is using this little hunting trip as a cover to investigate. Tossing the last bite of chicken into his mouth, a wicked smirk creeps across Colin's face at the mention of those cursed woods, because he was already plotting a solo trip out there anyway. Cut to the dark forest. Our boy is already deep in the shadows, locked onto a terrifying deer rocking glowing red eyes. He unleashes a volley of arrows, dropping the beast in absolute seconds. Stepping over the fresh kill, he immediately rips into it, digging for the monster core. Holding the glowing purple gem up to the light, he remembers how high society treats these things, like pure diamonds. Usually they just carve them into flashy necklaces to flex their wealth. But thanks to that insanely overpowered forbidden magic book, he knows the ultimate cheat code. He can literally melt this thing down into potions that juice up his mana and basically turn his body into an absolute tank. The crazy part, the buff totally depends on the monster's rank and species, but since this creepy deer was barely bottom-tier trash, this specific core is basically F-rank garbage. Flashback to earlier when Colin was still chatting with the butler. Our guy practically demanded a VIP pass to crash the hunting grounds. Normally, that place is strictly off-limits to anyone without a crown, but thanks to the current monster outbreak, only the elite divine guards and a handful of pros are even allowed past the gates. Colin would not take no for an answer, smoothly suggesting he could just tag along, right behind the heavy hitters. And somehow, his crazy bluff actually worked. Back in the present, while he is busy looting the corpse, Daku suddenly bursts out of the bushes. The guy is absolutely fuming, screaming at Colin for going rogue. He violently reminds him that unless you have noble blood or a mid-level badge, you are dead meat out here. If the guards catch a rookie pulling a stunt like this, it is an instant death sentence. Colin literally could not care less. He casually snatches Daku's sword straight out of his hands, stabbing the blade right into the dead deer. With a totally straight face, he claims Daku made the kill. And hey, since Daku actually has that mid-level badge, the problem is officially solved, right? Daku practically pops a blood vessel at this absolutely unhinged logic. He instantly regrets ever crossing paths with this psycho rookie who just keeps dragging him deeper into absolute chaos every single time they talk. Daku demands to know why Cornell greenlit Colin tagging along. In response, our guy casually whips out the head butler's blade, flashing it right in his face, smirking as he claims he just bagged a secret mission, and this shiny piece of steel is the ultimate proof. He spells it out clearly. They are both roped into backing up the current investigation, and while they are on the grind, they need to haul back some decent grub. Daku drops to his knees next to the slain monster, shooting our boy a serious side-eye, totally questioning his terrible luck for getting stuck with a guy like him. He breathes out a heavy sigh, but the second he shifts his gaze back down, he realizes the prime cuts are already swiped. Turns out the so-called outcast is already sizzling up the monster meat over an open fire, in record time, even hollering at Daku to grab a bite. Daku instantly freaks out wildly, demanding to know what on earth he thinks he is pulling. Colin literally has zero regrets, earning him an absolute earful, as Daku aggressively reminds him that this premium catch is strictly meant for the Lord and the higher-ups. Our hero brushes it off, pointing out the massive pile of leftovers and hyping him up to just sit down and feast. At first, the stressed servant fights the urge, but when Colin hits him with the brutal truth that he barely catches a meal once every 3 days and might straight up starve later if he gets penalized anyway, Daku finally crumbles. The mouth-watering scent of that roasted steak is just too overpowering. Shoved right under his nose, he devours the food like an absolute wild man. Between massive bites, Colin hits him with a heavy question. Why is he so hardcore about playing the loyal lapdog to his seniors when he could easily snap them in half? The servant fires back that raw power means nothing here, preaching the same old script about how nobles are literally handpicked by God, dripping in divine authority. He honestly believes that if he just grinds hard and bows his head enough, he might respawn as an elite in his next life, snatching that exact same holy buff. He spills about the absolute blood, sweat, and tears he sacrificed just to scrape his way up to a mid-tier servant. Also, his long-distance sister could finally brag about him. He aggressively tells Colin to back off and stop messing with his vibe. He keeps rambling about how they are insanely lucky just to be scrubbing floors and that they should just shut up and do the dirty work. Colin locks eyes with him and drops a bomb. Is all this simping just because he secretly craves a tiny taste of magic? Triggered by the disrespect, the servant snaps back, daring our boy to try casting even a basic tear spell if he is so tough. Without missing a beat, Colin leans in and coldly asks what he would do if he actually coached him to wield mana. That massive flex leaves the guy utterly paralyzed, stammering as he asks if our boy is actually a secret mage. But before the truth bombs drop, a blood-curdling screech rips through the nearby woods, jolting them both awake. They instantly connect the dots. The scouting knights just hit a death trap deep inside the pitch-black forest. One of the armored guards gets his shoulder brutally shredded by the razor-sharp jaws of a colossal mutated beast. Their commander screams at the squad to lock down their shield wall and stop panicking against the ambush. But reality hits him, like a truck pep talks mean nothing when his squad is getting absolutely butchered, left and right by these relentless monsters. A savage hound leaps straight for his throat, forcing him to cross his sword and shield to block its deadly snapping fangs. In his entire hardcore career, he never imagined a bunch of oversized mutts would push him to the absolute brink. Channeling every ounce of his power, he forces his blade upward, slicing clean through the monster's jaw and violently kicking its dead weight away. But out of nowhere, his rookie screams a warning. 3 more shadow beasts are lunging right at his blind spot. Knowing he is totally cooked, the veteran just freezes, bracing for the ultimate game over. Out of absolute nowhere, 3 arrows perfectly snipe the monster's jugulars, dropping them into a bloody, stumbling mess. Our duo steps out from the shadows like absolute bosses, casually checking if the knights are still breathing. Colin heavily scans the snarling pack, recognizing them as Azure Flames, infamous for their crazy glowing manes and tails. These things are literal walking jackpots. Their meat and bones are so top tier that dropping just one guarantees a life of luxury for days. But Colin is not after the scraps. His eyes are dead set on the monster's ultra-rare pulsing mana core. Locking onto his targets, he gears up to wipe the entire pack off the map, launching himself sky-high into the pitch-black night. Colin practically serves himself up on a silver platter for the bloodthirsty hounds below. Witnessing this absolute suicide dive, the Knight Commander writes him off as a total brain-dead rookie, diving straight into a meat grinder. But the plot twist: our boy is the apex predator looking down on these mob-reliant mutts as nothing more than pathetic, desperate prey. He sinks a single shaft through 3 skulls, touching down with a flawless superhero landing. Sensing a false opening, a rogue monster tries its luck, lunging for a cowardly back attack. Entering pure bullet time, our guy casually leans back, evading the strike before driving a devastating heel into its stomach, punting the creature straight back to the underworld. Witnessing him swat away a towering monstrosity like a harmless chihuahua leaves the entire Knight squad absolutely flabbergasted. Ice in his veins as usual, Colin casually plants a final shot right through its chest, permanently ending its misery. Seconds later, a fresh wave of corrupted predators creeps out from the shadowy tree line. Huge miscalculation on their part. He immediately unleashes an absolute hurricane of arrows, wiping the entire pack off the map in seconds. The squad captain watches this god-tier display of combat mastery. His brain short-circuits trying to process how one lone fighter just slaughtered more monsters than his whole elite unit put together. Without warning, a massive suffocating aura of pure danger triggers our boy's survival instincts. He catapults backward just as a catastrophic geyser of roaring blue fire obliterates the exact spot he was standing. The culprit, a mutant variant that totally dwarfs the rest of the pack. Spotting crackling neon energy charging up inside its unhinged jaws, he instantly knows what's dropping next. 3 scorching plasma spheres rocket toward his face. Weaving through the crossfire like a hardened pro, he claps back, firing off a triple volley of lethal darts. Deciding to put the mutated mutt out of its misery, he crushes his boot squarely into its cranium. Absolute savagery. The explosive momentum of the stomp buries the monster's snout deep into the dirt, leaving it stuck like a terrified ostrich. Right then, a stray shaft screams past his cheek, serving as a harsh reality check that he's still trapped in a zone full of unpredictable wild cards. Turns out that shot wasn't meant for him. It completely snipes a stealthy creeper that was inches away from blindsiding him. Daku immediately barks at him to stay locked in, warning him never to drop his focus in an active war zone. Our hero shoots back a chill thumbs up to show gratitude, while Daku just exhales a massive annoyed sigh like your textbook tsundere. Thoroughly blown away, Captain Glenn respectfully steps up, desperate to know which noble house commands such overpowered fighters. Knowing Colin's terrible track record with first impressions, Daku intercepts. He flawlessly pitches himself and his buddy as a reserve holy knight, alongside a bottom-tier errand boy deployed strictly for backup by Marquis Darius's right-hand man Cornell. Hearing this incredibly bizarre class combo leaves Glenn utterly speechless. Once the elite squad registers that they just got bailed out by a benchwarmer and a peasant, their gratitude instantly morphs into pure revulsion. The female knight scoffs, openly mocking Cornell's sanity for sending the old hag's lackeys into a high-stakes combat zone. Meanwhile, another squad member grumbles under his breath, completely mortified that they got carried by literal noobs. Catching that shady remark, the totally oblivious Daku is left scratching his head, trying to figure out who the heck the old woman is. Ignoring the drama, Colin capitalizes on the downtime to harvest the glowing monster drops. Bingo. He extracts a solid mid-tier crystal, the exact ingredient he needs to brew a rare elixir perfectly matching the recipe from his arcane grimoire. Out of nowhere, the hulking knight barks at him angrily, demanding who gave him clearance to... Captain Glenn swiftly intervenes, ordering his men to drop the ego and keep their eyes locked on Lord Darius's primary objective, telling them to just let Colin handle the messy corpse cleanup. Refusing to back down, our boy stares right at the musclehead. He aggressively asks who he's calling a punk, tossing out a quick reminder about who just saved their hides. He doubles down, stating that only a brain-dead meathead would trash-talk the exact guy who literally just pulled them from the grave. Completely triggered by the clapback, the giant steps up fully ready to throw hands. Fortunately, both the girl and Captain Glenn jump in frantically, telling him to chill out. They shout out, and the absolute second that name drops, a flood of intense past life memories violently hits our boy. In his previous timeline, skipping Cornell, this exact trio, Glenn, Marvin, and Sarah, were the absolute only allies Lord Darius actually trusted with his life. Tragically, all 3 were wiped out on a doomed run in the Gloomwood Deep Forest. Their deaths triggered the slow, painful downfall of Lord Darius's entire empire. Our protagonist is genuinely stunned. He never imagined he'd be the wildcard stepping in to rewrite their tragic timeline today. Fueled by this massive revelation, he makes a quiet ironclad vow. There is zero chance he lets the Grim Reaper take them this time around. Sensing the massive spike in hostility, Daku quickly plays damage control. He apologizes for his hot-headed partner, swearing that the rookie is just clueless about protocol. Pleading with them to ignore the savage attitude, he gets cut off. Sarah violently snaps back, telling the wrinkly hag's pet dog to keep its mouth shut. Once more, poor Daku is left totally baffled, his brain melting as he tries to decode her bizarrely toxic insult. Glenn side-eyes Colin, asking if he is that cocky rookie flexing about taking the Lord's throne. He admits the kid packs a punch, but warns that chasing pipe dreams way above his pay grade is a fast track to regret. Wrapping things up, Captain Glenn tosses our guy a quick nod for the carry, excusing his squad, since they have a mission to crush. But out of nowhere, an ear-splitting roar rips through the air, rattling their bones. A massive pack of azure flames drops in, backed by their mega-evolved boss. Staring down that absolute unit of a magic beast, the trio completely freezes up. Sarah screams out that it is an Azure King, this alpha boss. Towering over them in blazing neon blue hellfire leaves the squad entirely paralyzed. It unleashes a deafening howl that literally shakes them to their core. The beast swipes its massive claws for a wipeout attack, moving way too fast for anyone to even blink, let alone dodge. Captain Glenn's entire life flashes before his eyes. He squeezes them shut, bracing for a total squad wipe. But when they finally snap open, they witness an absolute glitch in the Matrix. A bottom-tier servant, someone who should have 0 combat stats, just tanked the Azure King's lethal strike. Mind-blown, Glenn demands to know his real identity, never missing a chance to farm Aura. Colin smirks, calling himself the MVP who just carried them twice in 24 hours. Since basic hits do absolutely 0 damage to this raid boss, our guy steps up and drops his heavy attack Mountain Crusher straight onto the giant wolf. But the strike barely scratches the surface, failing to pierce the elite mob's ridiculously tanky armor. A split second later, the beast snaps back with a vicious counter. Colin braces for impact, but the raw kinetic force is just way too massive. His blade shatters into pieces, and he gets yeeted across the battlefield. Hitting the dirt, he realizes there is 0 chance he can solo this monstrosity with his current stats. A standard issue weapon is basically a butter knife against this thing. Catching this vibe, the 3 royal guards rush in to run interference while Sarah frantically checks if our guy is still breathing. Glenn barks out that the Azure King is a top-tier threat that has already flatlined heavily geared veterans. Not wasting a second, the Alpha Wolf commands its minions to swarm the squad, locking them in a deadly chokehold. Marvin totally loses his cool, freaking out over their next move. These trash mobs were already a massive headache, and now the final boss is breathing down their necks. Ice cold, our boy states. They need to completely ignore the minions. They are literally just brainless bots acting as the king's meat shields. If they snipe the king, the entire mob wave will instantly collapse. Hearing this strategy, Captain Glenn looks at him like he is out of his mind. Daku chimes in, stressing that this monster has slaughtered literal pros, making their win rate basically 0. He roasts Colin, asking how exactly he plans to clutch this up, holding a broken stick. Dripping with his usual swagger, Colin just shrugs and says they might as well roll the dice, leaving Daku convinced his brain is totally fried. Against all odds, Captain Glenn backs the crazy play, declaring that their only shot at survival is flawless teamwork. Meanwhile, Sarah drops a reality check saying pushing through that wall of bodyguards is basically suicide. Without missing a beat, our guy tells her to chill. A perfect window is about to open. Right on cue, the Azure King unleashes a blood-curdling roar, and the brainless puppets swarm in for the kill. Colin keeps his cool, ordering the squad to hold the line and let the aggro build up. Marvin instantly snaps, screaming at him and asking who made a random rookie the raid leader. Plot twist. Captain Glenn actually shuts Marvin down, barking that they do not have time for petty drama. He commands his squad to fall in line behind their carry. Getting ready to push, Colin looks dead at Daku, telling him to trust the process. If he ever wants to be a big brother his sister can brag about. Right then, Glenn screams that the mob wave is practically breathing on them. Even with death staring them down, Colin doubles down, demanding they hold fast and let the wolves get dangerously close. Only when the gnashing jaws are literally inches away does he finally scream the go code. First up, he cues Captain Glenn to pop Holy Protection, flashing the beast's blind. Next, he orders Marvin to trigger Heaven Shaker for massive knockback. Finally, he unleashes Sarah, telling her to slice a highway straight through the chaos with her phantom blade. Moving like a well-oiled machine, the squad pops off, tearing a massive hole right through the enemy formation. Mid-slash, the captain's brain is short-circuiting over how this kid understands their kits so perfectly. Combining their flashy sword combos and heavy hits, the golden window of opportunity is ripped wide. Our boy instantly signals Daku to stick to his 6. Sarah drops a little tough love motivation on him, warning the little doggy to not choke this up. Poor Daku just sweat drops, totally baffled as to why she keeps calling him that. Riding the momentum, Colin and Daku sprint full speed straight at the boss. Dodging the chaos, Daku yells over the noise, asking what the actual game plan is. Colin drops the ultimate psych out logic the Azure King has used, to everyone shivering in fear. If 2 nobodies bum rush it with 0 hesitation, its arrogant ego will short-circuit, leaving it wide open. Daku's brain is doing backflips, trying to decode this logic, demanding to know how the heck they're supposed to slay a king-tier beast with a busted blade. Our guy just smirks and hits him with a counter question, asking if swinging a sword is genuinely the only way to deal some heavy damage. Suddenly it clicks for Daku as a flashback hits him the moment he found out Colin is actually a magic user. He catches himself doubting if this crazy kid can actually drop the alpha boss. But a split second later, Glowing strands of mana erupt straight out of Colin's palms. This jumpstarts his internal magic circuits, flooding his entire body with pure energy. Pushing his aura into the red zone, he triggers a devastating ultimate technique, the Ice Lotus. Going absolutely all out, he shreds the Azure King with an absolute blizzard of razor-sharp ice projectiles. Daku watches the spectacle with his jaw on the floor, but the colossal beast somehow tanks the barrage. Not wasting a heartbeat, Daku launches himself into the air, mounts the monster's massive head, and violently buries his blade deep. Our MC instantly backs him up by channeling his eternal magic into the strike. The absolute unit of a boss finally crumbles to the dirt, triggering a massive pillar of light that shoots up into the sky. The moment their alpha bites the dust, the rest of the Azure Wolf Pack totally panics and dips into the dense woods. Daku is practically buffering as he tries to process the sheer chaos. He just stares blankly as an eerie dead silence washes over the blood-stained battlefield. With the bloodbath finally over, the royal guards sprint onto the scene, frantically checking to see if anyone caught any lethal injuries. Captain Glenn scans the perimeter quickly, confirming that the flaming wolves bounced the second their boss got deleted. Marvin, meanwhile, is completely dumbfounded, demanding to know how they managed to solo a literal raid boss without any backup. Playing it cool, Colin casually brushes it off, claiming they only clutched the win thanks to the guards running interference. He drops some humble pie, admitting that if the squad hadn't shown up, things could have gone horribly wrong. Over on the sidelines, Sarah squats down to inspect a leftover ice shard, her eyes narrowing as major red flags pop up about our boy's actual power level. Marvin chuckles and points out that the kid totally gives off their old captain's prime era vibes. Hearing this, Daku tilts his head, completely clueless about who they're hyping up. Marvin clears it up, dropping the name Marquis Darius Hall as their former boss, while Sarah chimes in that they used to ride together in the legendary Lionheart Brigade. She keeps the lore drop going, revealing that after their elite unit got shattered, the ones left standing ended up trading their old badges to become royal guards. Taking a cheap shot, she throws some spicy sarcasm, mocking how the old lady's lapdog is clueless about basic history. And yeah, that insult makes Daku completely snap. Stepping right up to her face, he goes ballistic over the lapdog comment and proudly shouts that his name is Daku, period. He orders her to carve his name into her brain, instantly returning fire by branding her an absolute old hag right back. Oof! That clapback hits way too close to home, leaving Sarah dead silent as the air turns freezing cold. Breaking the awkward tension, Marvin stammers out that she was actually talking about the Countess. Hearing that, Daku's eyes go wide with shock. But before his brain can even reboot, Sarah practically teleports into his personal space, angrily demanding to know what about her face screams old. She viciously defends her glowing youth, claiming she's still sitting at peak beauty. Daku, however, totally doubles down and brutally reminds her that her golden years are ancient history. He flat out roasts her for being delusional, which earns him a merciless air-stealing chokehold from the triggered warrior. Watching the mess, our MC gets hit with a heavy wave of nostalgia, flashing back to his previous life, when his crew would goof off with this exact same chaotic energy. The warm memory gets cut short, though, as the heavy thudding of galloping hooves shatters the moment. Young Master Freed rolls up to the drop zone on horseback, catching the entire squad totally off guard. The crew immediately drops into a respectful bow as he announces that he bolted straight from the base camp the second he heard explosions. Scanning the absolute graveyard of Azure Flame Wolves, he narrows his eyes and asks what kind of bloodbath just went down. Captain Glenn steps up, debriefing the noble about how they pushed deeper into Gloomwood Forest for a recon mission, only to get instantly jumped by the pack out of nowhere. He bluntly admits they would be totally wiped out if Colin and Daku hadn't swooped in to save their skins. Freed snaps his gaze toward our MC, who is currently ignoring everyone and hyper-focusing on looting the precious monster cores. Looking at the kid like he's absolute trash, Freed mentally questions why a nobody like him is even out here playing hero. Oblivious to the hate, Captain Glenn keeps hyping the boys up, swearing that both of them are hiding some insane potential. He then officially asks to escort them back to base, wanting to brag about their crazy kill count directly to the family head. Alarm bells instantly ring in Freed's head, as he remembers Colin throwing down the gauntlet for the family throne. He knows damn well that letting the old man hear about this epic carry job will completely wreck his own shot at succession. As the panic sinks in, and his eyes slide over to Daku, and a sketchy, manipulative scheme starts brewing in his mind. Strolling right up to the swordsman, he casually drops that he's been wondering where Daku has been hiding lately, instantly cranking the tension in the air to an 11. He slyly interrogates why an absolute unit like Daku is wasting his time shadowing a loser like Colin, heavily implying that the duo makes zero sense. He doubles down, spitting that a bottom-tier servant stepping onto the sacred hunting grounds is a massive, unforgivable offense. He mocks Daku, asking if he was trying to snag some forbidden loot, way out of his league. Daku just stands there completely frozen. Fried brands him an absolute waste of space, sneering that his sister Erika would be beyond disgusted. She'd be absolutely sick to her stomach knowing he tossed all her hard-learned lessons straight out the window. But Colin steps right up to the plate, firing back that he's still leagues above a spoiled Nepo baby who can't even breathe without his mommy holding his hand. He throws down a painfully sarcastic greeting, labeling the young lord a total flop. Hearing this, Sarah physically has to muffle a giggle. Captain Glenn shoots her a sharp look, warning her to zip it before she fans the flames. Meanwhile, Fried's face practically burns with unfiltered rage. Colin isn't done roasting him, though. He ruthlessly points out that nobody bows. The entire crowd's jaws practically hit the floor. Not missing a beat, Colin snarks about how amazing it must feel to boss everyone around. Simply because his overpowered parents paved the way. Trying to flex his authority, Fried steps up, threatening to have him erased from existence without lifting a single finger. Colin doesn't even flinch, smoothly agreeing with the threat. But he drops the ultimate mic drop, pointing out that the only way Fried could ever pull that off is by running home and crying to mommy. He'd literally have to beg her to handle a pesky servant for him. Hearing that, Fried completely snaps, screaming for his crew to lock Colin down instantly. Heavy steel chains fly through the air, completely wrapping Colin up. One of the masked killers instantly presses a razor-sharp blade right up against Colin's neck. The whole area goes dead silent as the tension spikes out of control. The royal guards immediately spot the signature gear, recognizing these phantoms as the Blades of the Empire, a terrifying squad of top-tier shadow operatives. They're the personal attack dogs of the Williams family. Sarah whispers that even high-ranking nobles are terrified of their ice-cold brutality and totally broken skill levels. She honestly wonders out loud why the Countess would ever hand over her son's safety to such absolute monsters. Before this whole mess goes entirely off the rails, Captain Glenn steps right into the crossfire, begging Fried to just drop the beef. He points out that these two servants only showed up to help with the investigation under the big boss's direct command. Fried violently grinds his teeth, glaring daggers as he asks if Glenn really wants to cross him too. But Colin cuts right through the drama. He tells the captain to stop stressing over him, ordering Glenn to just take the investigation intel straight back to the family head. Sarah instantly puts two and two together. Colin is giving them a clean break because getting caught in this crossfire would totally ruin them. So, bailing out is literally their only survival play. Glenn hesitates for a split second, then finally folds, pulling his squad out of the danger zone. Still boiling with anger, Fried turns his crazy eyes back to Colin, mockingly asking if the reality check has finally kicked in about how utterly powerless he is. His entire survival is literally resting in the young lord's palm. Colin just stares him down, daring him to finish the job right then and there. But Fried smirks, claiming he has a way more twisted plan. He slowly slides his heavy steel out of its sheath. Locking his sights on Daku, he spits out that every single action comes with a brutal price tag. Tossing the gleaming weapon right at the boy's feet, he drops a sickening ultimatum. Daku can totally clear his name, but only if he grabs that sword and silences his own friend. He ruthlessly executes the servant, leaving Daku absolutely stunned in silence. Fried then dangles a twisted promise, swearing to let Daku walk away without a scratch, as long as he carries out this grim execution. Suddenly we flash back to exactly 30 days after hellish demons crash down onto Earth. We see him getting mercilessly pounded into the dirt by grotesque mutant freaks, looking like some nightmare combo of goblins and hulking ogres. The monstrous overlord has him pinned down in chains, taunting our guy for playing the role of a pathetic failed savior. The demon boss tosses a blood-stained blade at his feet, offering a sick deal. He will spare the captive humans only if Colin slaughters his closest bro Daku, who is chained up right beside him. Daku looks totally wrecked, barely clinging to life as he spits up blood. The demon overlord just kicks back on his throne, soaking up the despair, getting a sick thrill from forcing humanity's so-called ultimate hero into an impossible corner, making him butcher his own best friend. Playing along, Colin grips the heavy hilt of the sword. As he approaches his battered comrade, Daku starts choking out his heartbreaking final words. He reveals that the tragic day their dad passed away was actually his little sister Erika's birthday. And just like a cruel joke, their mom caught a mysterious sickness and faded away right after. Left totally orphaned and defenseless, the siblings were dragged into brutal slavery. He chokes back tears, explaining how Marquis Darius eventually bought them out of that hell. But their stroke of luck was a total lie. He was viciously torn away from his little sister, who got shipped off to the Williams family estate, all because of the wicked orders from Darius's second wife. Daku grips the dirt, desperately pleading that since the demonic hordes have not invaded that territory yet, his dying wish is for Colin to track down and protect his sister, clinging to the hope that she is still safe. He tearfully mentions how she was always such a picky eater, and as his voice breaks, he begs Colin to tell Erica that her big bro died as a legendary knight, just so she can smile knowing he fiercely protected her until his final breath. A single tear rolls down Colin's face as he mutters a tragic apology, engraving that final wish into his soul. Boom! We snap back to the present timeline, where the ultimate plot twist hits the roles are completely reversed. Now Colin is the one locked in heavy chains, while Daku is the guy getting blackmailed into executing him. Seeing Daku shaking and hesitating, Freed barks at him, demanding to know why this lowly servant is not instantly following his lethal command. But Daku actually steps up for his bro, fiercely clapping back at the noble brat, shouting that you do not just butcher the exact guy who literally dragged you back from the jaws of death. Freed immediately resorts to dirty mind games, throwing Erica's name into the mix, asking how shattered she would be if she found out her big bro abandoned her, just to play hero for some random nobody. He keeps pouring salt in the wound, dropping twisted lies about his little sister. Freed casually drops that the Williams family butler told him she has been aggressively starving herself, skipping meals left and right, purely to scrape together enough coins for a knight's sword for him. And because of this, she literally passed out from starvation just 7 days ago. That massive bombshell instantly shatters Daku's resolve, sending him crashing to his knees, desperately begging the spoiled lord to save her. Wearing a sickening smirk, Freed masterfully pulls the strings, commanding him to slice Colin's throat if he ever wants to see his sister alive again. Hearing this absolute garbage, Colin suddenly bursts into a totally unhinged manic laugh. When a confused Freed asks what is so funny, Colin roasts him for being a pathetic coward, calling him absolute scum, lower than street trash, and boldly dares him, saying the lordling lacks the guts to do it himself. Instead, he drops a wild proposal, demanding the noble let him and Daku clash in a brutal death match, promising it will be a way more entertaining bloodbath. Sweat drips down Freed's face as panic creeps in. He is totally clueless about Colin's actual endgame. He questions if this so-called badass is just terrified of the Empire's elite blades, but his sick curiosity wins out. He actually takes the bait, unchaining Colin to watch the chaos unfold. Our MC cracks his neck, squaring up against his absolute best friend, ready to throw hands. Staring down the razor-sharp edge of Colin's blade, Daku starts sweating, wondering if this guy has actually lost his mind, totally freezing up in shock. But Freed immediately weaponizes his sister's name again, forcefully shoving Daku into kill mode. Before anyone can blink, Colin explodes into motion, launching a lethal full-throttle strike straight at Daku's chest. Caught completely off guard, Daku gets launched backward across the dirt. The MC regains his footing instantly and dives in for round 2, but this time Daku parries the brutal blow, frantically screaming at his friend, demanding to know why the heck he is going psycho and forcing this deadly showdown. The MC flashes a brief apologetic grin, but sharply claps back that he is definitely not planning on kicking the bucket today. That savage response finally flips Daku's switch. He shifts into a hardcore battle stance, unleashing a flurry of strikes that forces the MC to vault backward. Smirking, the MC drops a chilling warning, boldly claiming he will obliterate him in exactly 3 moves. This cocky flex seriously ticks Daku off. Gripping his sword tight, he bites back, declaring he does not even need 3 hits, and swears he will end this whole fight in 3 seconds flat. The tension skyrockets as both warriors violently dash toward each other. But a split second before their blades violently collide, the MC whispers a secret code: he would never ever betray his own brothers in arms. That exact phrase sparks an intense flashback in Daku's mind, making him freeze for a microsecond. In that instant, it completely clicks for Daku, realizing this entire flashy deathmatch is just a massive high IQ distraction. Smirking internally, he goes all in, playing his part perfectly to spark absolute chaos. The chaos tears the battlefield wide open, creating a perfect window that Colin uses to launch himself through the air, locking his sights dead on Freed. But Freed isn't totally helpless, parrying the lethal blade at the absolute last second with a spark of volatile thunder magic. Seeing the noble actually put up a fight, Colin smirks, roasting him for finally growing a spine, and pushing back. The exact second those words hit, the spoiled mama's boy absolutely loses his mind in pure rage, screaming at Colin to back off violently, insisting he's not some weak pushover who still needs his diapers. The explosive shockwave shoves Colin backward, just as the Empire blades draw their weapons to jump in, but Freed abruptly waves them off, barking at his squad to stay put. The triggered noble stakes his claim, his ego completely bruised, vowing to slaughter the lowborn trash with his own 2 hands, once and for all demanding a strict one-on-one fight without anyone stealing his kill. Crackling electricity pools around his fists, blinding the area. Colin stiffens his instincts, screaming that something massive is coming, right as a blaring system alert warns him of a dangerous magical spike. Needing a quick tactical read, Colin violently scans the privileged brat's raw stats. The readout is practically a joke 0 magical defense, and his thunder skills are incredibly mid, but the glowing interface keeps blinking a heavy warning that his current level simply cannot tank a direct hit. Reading that, our reckless psycho just flashes a massive unhinged grin. Screw the warnings. He wants to feel the heat for himself and see if this stupid data is actually legit. Whipping up freezing frost in his palms, he charges straight into the teeth of Freed's raging purple storm with absolutely 0 hesitation. The 2 polar opposites violently collide, detonating a shockwave that shreds the terrain to pieces. As a massive choking dust cloud swallows the battlefield, Freed desperately rubs his eyes, utterly mind-blown. In his twisted worldview, a filthy commoner should not possess even a single drop of mana. He smugly assumes their first explosive clash ended in a dead tie. But out of nowhere, jagged ice spikes rocket through the smokescreen, though the noble instantly fries them into harmless steam. Rattled and sweating, Freed frantically tries to do the math, trying to figure out how the hell ice magic just sniped him. Right on cue, Colin's voice echoes through the fog, casually mocking the guy, asking why his big bad wizard energy suddenly evaporated. Locking eyes with a stare so icy it could freeze hell over, Colin slaps the Nepo baby with the ultimate insult of flat-out failure. The entire squad stands absolutely stunned, their jaws hitting the floor as they watch a peasant effortlessly shrug off a highborn's lethal strike. Daku literally cannot believe his own vision, while the pampered master is practically dripping cold sweat. A dirt poor, nobody just whipped up frost magic powerful enough to match his elite bloodline. Going completely into denial, Freed desperately convinces himself it is just some scummy sleight of hand illusion, channeling every last ounce of juice into his ultimate lightning strike. The furious rich kid screams that it is complete, utter garbage. To think a rat from the slums can wield authentic spells. Sensing the massive incoming nuke, our boy tightly wraps himself in a humming blue barrier, bracing for the brutal impact. But at the worst possible second, a blaring system pop-up alerts him that his mana tank has hit rock bottom. His glowing shield instantly shatters into a million pieces. The sickening wave of mana drain crushes his body, leaving him swaying unsteadily, as he desperately leans his entire body weight against his sword just to stay. Reality hits like a freight train. He is boxed in from all sides with 0 escape routes left. Clenching his jaw so hard it might snap, Colin decides to just eat the apocalyptic wave of purple lightning point blank. Freed pours everything he has into the blast, absolutely dead set on wiping this glitch in the matrix off the face of the earth. Flesh frying under the insane voltage, Colin gags on the bitter thought of losing to that toxic red-headed witch all over again. No way in hell is he letting this precious second chance crash and burn into the exact same tragic game over. Forcing his empty core to cast a spell on literal fumes, the spellbook violently spams critical warnings threatening that pushing past 0 mana will permanently trigger a berserker state. But Colin does not give a single damn. He would gladly sacrifice his own mind rather than kick the bucket as a massive loser. The pupils of his eyes morph, turning eerily dark. Unholy streaks of blue and pitch-black hellfire explode, swallowing the entire left side of his body. In a flash, his flesh warps, mimicking the terrifying monsters he hunted back in his previous life. The system's AI practically blue screens, completely unable to scan, his mutated power levels glitching out and spitting unknown across every single category. An insane, suffocating surge of dark energy pumps like pure adrenaline through his veins, totally frying his senses. A skull-splitting migraine kicks in, blurring his vision and suffocating his lungs. Swallowing the agony, the battle-hardened beast notices that the cocky noble is also completely gassed out. Channeling the dark aura into his blade, he casually swats away the leftover lightning with one devastating swing. Freed freezes in utter dread, having never witnessed magic this incredibly monstrous in his privileged life. His blood runs cold as our guy rockets high into the atmosphere. Plunging his blade deep into the earth, a massive tidal wave of jagged, razor-sharp ice spikes violently erupts from the soil, tracking straight for the screaming noble. Still clinging to his delusions, the rich kid genuinely believes his mid-tier thunder spam will be enough to vaporize the incoming avalanche. But dude realizes way too late that the whole thing was a massive bait, giving his rival the perfect opening to ghost behind him. Moving like an elite shadow walker, Colin creeps up on his blind spot, while Freed is completely distracted trying to parry a relentless storm of razor-sharp ice. Freed's pupils instantly pinprick in absolute terror, His entire life practically goes on fast. In a total panic, he manages to cheat death at the absolute last second, throwing his own prize stallion under the bus as a literal meat shield. The spoiled noble stumbles onto the dirt, barely keeping his balance on feet that clearly have never touched grass in their life. Meanwhile, our boy is just absolutely glowing, overflowing with this insane blue mana that looks like it has zero limits. Catching Colin gasping heavily for air, the Silver Spoon Kid smirks, realizing his opponent is totally gassed out and basically running on fumes. He immediately channels a Chidori blade, sparking up a blinding, crackling ball of pure lightning magic right in his palm. But our guy does not even flinch. He effortlessly slices straight through the roaring electricity, announcing that it is finally time to end this chaotic street brawl. As the chilling steel halts just millimeters from his violently pale face, Freed suddenly understands that Mommy's money cannot buy his way out of this one. He recoils and squeezes his eyes shut, bracing for the absolute worst. Right at that fatal split second, a blindingly bright golden aura bursts from the ground, saving him from getting completely shish kebabbed. The massive barrier aggressively rebounds Colin's own kinetic energy. Both guys freeze, totally shell-shocked, as they stare up at Freed's savior, who drops a booming command to cut the crap immediately. Lord Darius glares down, reminding the brats that they are not brawling in some dirty underground fight club. This is a high-class hunting estate, and he orders them to drop their weapons and kill the childish beef right now. Looming over them on his massive armored warhorse, he coldly tells them to settle their score like real men in an official duel. Once they drag themselves back to the lavish hall manor, Freed shoots his dad a super complex look, totally torn between pure relief and deep-seated daddy issues. Off to the side, our main character just stares blankly with those glowing demonic eyes, while the very last drops of his chaotic magic completely fizzle out. His legs just instantly give out. He collapses straight to the dirt, utterly drained as his body finally morphs back to its normal state. Catching that incredibly bizarre, lingering magical vibe, practically radiating off the kid, the Lord is visibly shook and heavily intrigued. Realizing he is finally out of the danger zone, Colin's adrenaline crashes hard, and he aggressively faceplants out cold. Literally days blur by before he finally reboots. Blinking away the intense brain fog, he realizes he is actually tucked into a crazy comfortable bed somewhere deep inside the Hall estate. Out of nowhere, that familiar scorching heat of the demonic energy spikes in his veins. He violently shoots up from the mattress, frantically inspecting his own skin. Thank God his body is perfectly normal, and he does not look like a complete monster. While he is silently hyping himself up over not sprouting actual demon horns, a super familiar soft voice right next to him sighs, saying they are so relieved he is not dead. Our dude snaps his head over and spots Daku looking like an absolute zombie. No cap. The bro looks like he was the one stuck in a 5-day coma. The exhausted guy quickly dumps all the lore on him, explaining how his dramatic fainting spell literally had the whole squad stressing. Apparently, Sarah was aggressively slapping the soul back into him, trying to wake him up, and Captain Glenn actually had to piggyback his heavy body all the way to the crib. Sarah was freaking out so hard, she straight up held the medics at sword point, promising them a matching coffin if they let her bestie die. He seriously struggles to picture that chaotic scene, but there is absolutely no hiding the fact that he feels like $1,000,000 right now. Needing to stretch his legs, he tells Daku to tag along for a massive breakfast run so he can go give Sarah a proper shout-out. But before they dip, he definitely does not forget how Daku absolutely clutched up and honored the bro code. He drops his boy a genuine thank you with a super cheeky smirk. Daku completely plays it cool, acting totally unbothered, but deep down he is honestly stunned that Colin actually knows how to show gratitude. A bit later out in the courtyard, the entire servant crew practically starts violently shaking the second our protagonist walks by. He hits them with massive side-eye, deeply confused, and wondering if he walked out with something ridiculously embarrassing on his face. Catching some maids eagerly spilling the tea about his absolutely unhinged brawl with Freed, he goes full stealth mode, sneaking right up and jump-scaring the life out of them. With a sweet smile, he asks them to drop the exact gossip they have been spreading. Totally panicked, the girls instantly scatter like roaches. Daku just scratches his head, completely baffled as to why the women are bolting, like they leaning in to intensely inspect his friend's insanely ghostly, sleep-deprived face. Colin confidently decides they must be traumatized by Daku's walking corpse aesthetic. Daku gets immediately triggered, reminding him that he literally skipped sleep for 4 whole nights straight just to watch over his ungrateful self. Not vibing with Daku's sassy clapback, our boy barks right back, screaming that he literally never begged him to play Florence Nightingale. Right at that peak chaotic moment, Lieutenant Hairloss struts up with his obnoxious squad, loudly roasting the guy who might literally own the estate one day. Insanely annoyed by the terrible timing, both boys whip around and scream in perfect sync for the absolute clown to read the room. Out of nowhere, they literally strong-arm the guy into spitting out a forced apology for absolutely zero reason. The lieutenant's brain buffers for a hot second before he violently explodes, screaming that he pulled up today just to get bloody payback for getting utterly humiliated a few days back. Totally fed up with the boomer's endless yapping, our boy casually strides right up to his face. While the dude spits out pathetic excuses for catching a massive L last time, this delusional lieutenant deadass thinks the outcome is gonna change today. He fully swears he's about to hand this arrogant punk a brutal reality check he will take straight to the grave. The guy dramatically snaps his fingers and barks out his squad's name, but then crickets. Pure agonizing silence drags on as he just stands there, fully hyping himself up to watch our boy get absolutely clapped. Instead, he catches his goons just freezing up like a bunch of lost toddlers. The lieutenant's face twists in rage, barking at them, asking if their ears are suddenly broken. Like, hello, that snap was the clear-cut cue to jump the target. But his troops flinch hard, nervously reminding Big Boss Baldy that the guy standing in front of them is an absolute demon, who literally threw hands toe-to-toe with Master Freed. Daku just lets out a breathless 0% shocked by their sheer terror after witnessing Colin completely pop off in person. Meanwhile, the lieutenant's forehead violently twitches, a massive vein practically bulging out of his skull from sheer humiliation. Realizing his entire squad is completely spineless, he decides to roll up his own sleeves, desperate to scrape up whatever tiny shred of pride he still has. That's exactly when his crazed gaze locks onto his favorite punching bag, standing right in the strike zone. He lunges violently, snatching the dude by the collar and violently jerking him forward. Spitting pure venom, he brands him a backstabbing stray who turned on his own master, screaming that it's an unforgivable crime. The lieutenant crowns himself judge, jury, and executioner. You can literally see a twisted thrill lighting up this ugly creep's fistule at the idea of pummeling his totally... But Daku pulls a completely wild reverse card. Without even breaking a sweat, he casually catches that pathetic haymaker with just one single hand. The lieutenant's arm starts violently shaking, hopelessly locked inside Daku's absolute ironclad grip. Ice-cold Daku flat out tells this garbage human that he seriously lacks the clearance to hand out punishments. Then he effortlessly swats Lieutenant Baldy away like a desperate ex who simply cannot take a hint. The dude's brain practically blue screens from the sheer shock. He literally cannot compute how his quiet little lapdog suddenly sprouted the spine to aggressively bite back. Triggered by the chaotic screaming match, Captain Glenn storms onto the scene, demanding to know who is killing the peace and quiet this early in the AM. Marvin and Sarah trail right behind him, heavily glaring at the crowd for completely ruining their morning breakfast run. The lieutenant flashes a slimy, arrogant smirk. He is fully convinced the elite royal guard is about to fold these troublemakers into origami way worse than he ever intended. Going full try-hard, this greasy bootlicker instantly drops into a desperate bow, aggressively hyping up the guards to score cheap. He rapidly spins a totally fake narrative, claiming he was just doing his heroic duty by violently installing some basic manners into these toxic punks. Meanwhile, casually hitting a flawless JoJo pose right behind him, our boy throws a super chill salute to Captain Glenn, like everything is perfectly Gucci. The lieutenant's jaw literally drops to the floor. He is deeply triggered by how insanely casual this kid is acting in front of a high-tier authority figure. Out of nowhere, Marvin totally crashes the pity party, aggressively shoving the lieutenant out of the frame, while grinning that he's just hyped to see Colin finally awake. Processing this wild turn of events, the lieutenant's face basically turns a frozen shade of blue from maximum confusion. In real time, he is watching the absolute apex predators of the territory, bantering and heavily vibing with the exact same kid he just labeled trash, like they practically go way back. For a split second, he seriously gaslights himself into believing this whole thing is just a crazy fever dream. Running totally out of ammo, he desperately whines that top-tier elites hanging out with bottom-barrel peasants violently break strict protocol. Sarah heavily drapes an arm over his paralyzed shoulder, staring dead into his soul. As she drops a bombshell, those dusty rules written by the old hag Katrina mean absolutely zero to her. She ruthlessly tacks on that the grating pitch of his squeaky voice is actively murdering her brain cells, heavily suggesting he instantly zip his lips unless he's actively itching to rock a matching eye patch. Dropping that terrifyingly sweet threat, our hero casually tags along with the VIP squad to grab some grub. Peeking over his shoulder with a totally devilish smirk, he tosses out a brutally fake polite apology to the boss man for utterly clowning on him once again. The camera instantly cuts to a dimly lit local pub, where the whole crew is throwing back drinks to properly hype up his massive comeback. Kicking back, Colin openly confesses he purely meant to drop a thank you for bailing him out earlier, but clearly he just racked up another heavy debt on his tab. Brushing it off, Sarah just casually shrugs her shoulders, chiming in that smashing that creepy potato head's ego was basically a free therapy session for her anyway. Captain Glenn smoothly jumps in, serving him a reality check that Colin actually hard carried their entire squad back in the dark woods. Leaning in with pure curiosity, Daku asks Sarah if she has some dark, long-standing history with the bald lieutenant. The girl instantly flares up, practically catching fire just remembering that utterly smooth-brained bozo. Sensing the aggressive vibe shift, Captain Glenn quickly hard pivots the conversation. He leans forward, dropping the heavy lore that their top-tier roster is currently bleeding dry, leaving exactly 3 elite knights still actively standing. Looking them dead in the eye, he flat-out invites the chaotic duo to officially sign up. Colin absorbs the massive shockwave like a complete stone wall, but his best bro totally short-circuits, completely losing his grip on reality at the wild thought of a bench warmer, securing a permanent slot in the legendary Royal Guard. Glenn totally locks in, heavily stressing that this is a once-in-a-lifetime because it would grant them all the top-tier perks strictly reserved for high-ranking butlers. Our protagonist completely shuts the offer down without even blinking. He makes it crystal clear he has absolutely zero interest in cosplaying as some glorified knight. His eyes are locked on a massive endgame, and he absolutely refuses to compromise his ultimate vision. That bold statement drops like a bomb, leaving the entire tavern crew absolutely speechless. Then one of the guys speaks up, telling him to drop this delusional pipe dream of claiming the Lord of Line title. He warns Colin that just because he scored a lucky win against the young master doesn't mean his ego should go through the roof. But then the wasted female squad member cuts him off, slurring her words heavily as she corrects him. She insists that whatever trick Colin pulled off it was straight-up sorcery. Pointing a shaky finger right at his face, she accuses him of busting out hidden spells to take down the Azure King too. Colin just smirks in total silence, letting the chaos brew while the other guy starts interrogating him. He aggressively demands to know how a bottom-tier former slave could possibly hack his way into wielding mana. Even the veteran steps up, backing the kid into a corner for answers. Honestly, Colin isn't even sweating it. He always knew these guys would eventually connect the dots and sniff out his hidden arsenal. While they are glaring daggers at him right now, he is secretly thrilled because he already cooked up the perfect alibi. Acting like the ultimate manipulator on the block, he enjoys the spotlight. The woman is literally seconds away from dropping a massive bombshell allegation, bracing Colin for a brutal fallout and an epic showdown. But her wildest theory: she assumes our guy is actually a fallen aristocrat, giving him a micro heart attack for absolutely no reason. His buddy is standing there completely mind-blown, while the girl gets totally hyped up, heavily applauding her own detective skills for uncovering his. She is so hammered that she spins an entire tragic lore about him being a bastard child who got dragged away in chains. She claims his grand mission is to snatch back his stolen estate and flex his rightful authority once again. It is a massive stretch, even for her crazy standards, leaving his buddy wondering how this wild teammate pulled that theory out of thin air. As for Colin, he simply chuckles. All he has to do is nod along and ride the delusion, letting them cement his brand new lore. They actually believe he is spitting sheer facts. As Colin turns on the waterworks, playing the victim card about being a ruined noble, his Oscar-worthy performance hits them right in the feels, instantly turning his biggest haters into sympathetic softies. He loudly swears vengeance to reclaim his stolen throne. While the entire squad is eating out of the palm of his hand, his buddy side-eyes the situation, totally convinced that the veteran Captain Glenn will easily see right through this simple bluff. But his hopes get instantly crushed a second later. The old geezer swallows the bait hook, line, and sinker, promising to zip his lips. Colin plays it super cool as the commander warns him to hide his overpowered abilities from the high society elites, especially the madam and the young master. On top of that, Glenn drops a bombshell. The Marquis himself is demanding a private audience with our guy. The scene wraps up as Colin strides off toward the VIP meetup. Meanwhile, Glenn watches him fade into the distance, narrowing his eyes as he dissects the fake Ale City backstory Colin just pitched. While walking, his buddy is still completely mind-blown by how easily that massive fib carried them through. But more than anything, he is scratching his head over the specific choice of Ale City. Colin breaks it down, explaining that the distant hub is an absolute chaotic melting pot far outside their territory. This makes it completely impossible for anyone to fact-check his fake history. Honestly, this whole fallen aristocrat persona is the ultimate cheat code for pulling strings and manipulating everyone later down the line. Moving on, his buddy pivots the conversation. Curving his hand into a hook, he demands to know if Colin actually mastered that legendary three-legged crow technique, or if that was just a random flex he pulled out of thin air to mess with their heads. Flashback time. Back during the rescue mission, Colin decapitated that bulky beast in one smooth strike, telling Daku to survive and deliver his own dramatic final words to his sister. Without missing a beat, he went full demon mode, shredding through the remaining mob of creatures. But just as his blade was about to execute the raid boss, his swing got totally paralyzed by a suffocating wave of heavy vaporizing magic. Colin was locked in pure shock as the monster ruthlessly mocked his pathetic attempt at victory. But then Daku clutched up, exploiting a split-second blind spot to launch himself forward. He caught the giant completely off guard before it could even twitch to defend itself. Ultimately, the duo executed a flawless combo attack, absolutely obliterating the beast once and for all. And then they diced the monster up so thin it literally looked like a sashimi platter. After the fight, Daku threw some major attitude at our boy, calling him an absolute jerk for treating his dramatic last words like a complete joke. But their little bickering session got cut brutally short. Suddenly, they were ambushed by another wave of those grotesque blubbering demon orcs, or whatever those freaks were. Daku sliced right through the first target, violently screaming at Colin for pulling a reckless stunt that nearly got their VIP hostage sent straight to the afterlife. Colin immediately clapped back, pointing out that hesitating would not have saved anyone since those ruthless beasts show zero mercy anyway. Still annoyed, Daku complained about why our guy could not have at least dropped a tiny heads up before going full kamikaze. Our guy totally roasted him for thinking that leaking his own playbook was a big brain move. The banter just kept escalating. They were straight up going for the throat, with their insults leaving everyone else standing there completely baffled. By the time the dust settled, the only ones throwing hands were the guys who were literally supposed to be teammates. Daku then flashes this custom three-legged crow hand sign, fully convinced it makes him look like the absolute main character. Turns out he picked it up from some dude named Rowan. It's basically a secret handshake signaling ultimate squad loyalty. Our guy struggled hard to twist his fingers into the right shape, but still found time to clown on Daku for nearly getting kidnapped again like an absolute rookie. Flash forward to right now, and Colin casually drops a bombshell. He actually recognized that hand sign. He learned it from a fallen comrade, a brother he used to call his absolute best friend. Hearing that raw confession leaves Daku totally stunned, mind-blown that a legend like that actually existed. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, a heavy knock echoes through the hall. The time has finally come. Both of them are being summoned straight to the marquee. The big boss is in a shockingly good mood, asking Colin how he's holding up. Our guy grins, answering with total swagger, saying he's completely dialed in and ready to roll. The Marquis then turns his attention to Daku, who instantly bows down, showing absolute reverence to his lord. Then the mood shifts, cutting straight to the chase. The Marquis didn't just invite them over for small talk. He wants to address the absolute chaos that went down at the hunting grounds. Yep, the exact same disaster they were just bickering about earlier. Sneaking into that territory without clearance was a spectacularly bad move. The Marquis steps right up to them, opening up about his deep-rooted history with Glenn. Those two have stared death in the face together multiple times, dodging the Reaper, just to make it this far. Because of that brutal history, the Marquis genuinely dreads losing his people. He practically salutes these two rookies for bailing his brothers out of hell. Daku chimes in, his voice heavy with guilt over the squad mates they couldn't save, calling the whole mission a massive failure on their end. But the Marquis instantly shuts that down, wiping their slates clean. He tells them straight up that the blood isn't on their hands. It was his own blind spot for not predicting that massive monster ambush before it hit. Colin and his bro just trade confused glances, while the Marquis figures they already got the lowdown on the Royal Knights drama straight from Captain Glenn himself. Now that they are face to face, he demands Colin give his final answer, and right on cue, our guy ruthlessly rejects the massive offer without even blinking. Pivoting his gaze to Daku, the Marquis hits him with the exact same question, completely jump-scaring the kid. Bro, just got a hand-delivered invitation to join the elite royal guard. Trembling like a leaf in pure panic, he stammers out that he's way too green to even be a basic guard, let alone step into the legendary shoes of a royal protector. Seeing his bro spiraling, Colin steps in, hyping him up and telling him to just spit out what's actually in his heart. Locking in, Daku channels all that raw emotion and literally screams out his burning dream to join the royal guard. His answer echoes through the room loud and clear, but the Marquis isn't done. He turns back to Colin, offering him a blank check reward. Handed that kind of ultimate power, Colin drops a dead serious request. He wants to buy the freedom of Erika, Daku's sister, who's currently trapped serving the Williams family. That massive flex completely paralyzes Daku. He literally never saw that insane plot twist. Colin stands his ground, passionately explaining how the siblings were absolutely inseparable until the Hall family ripped them apart just because her body was considered too fragile. But deep down, Daku has been silently suffering, just wanting his sister back. The Marquis raises an eyebrow, double-checking if he really wants to waste his one wish on that. Colin fiercely replies that he shares an unbreakable bond with his bro right here, calling him his absolute best friend in the world, and there is zero chance he's going to leave his boy hanging while he's secretly in pain. Daku's jaw practically hits the floor, his brain short-circuits hearing such god-tier praise. As Colin fiercely demands this family reunion, that raw ride-or-die brotherhood instantly triggers the Marquis' own nostalgia for his war buddies. But reality hits hard, since this pulling strings isn't going to be a quick fix. Immediately shifting gears, the Marquis orders Daku to step outside the room for now. The kid quickly obeys, but as the door clicks shut, his mind is racing, utterly fascinated by what kind of legend Colin actually is. Now alone with the absolute top dog, Colin braces himself as the Marquis pivots to a way heavier topic, flashing back to the day our guy brazenly challenged Thrace to a duel. Even back then, the Marquis instantly clocked that this kid was far from your average run-of-the-mill slave. And what absolutely blew his mind was watching Colin tank a lethal magic strike, only to flawlessly destroy his opponent without taking a single scratch. But the craziest part? How he casually flexed an ability he had already busted out multiple times before. On top of that, the Marquis totally saw right through the fake alibi he spun to cover up his clash with Captain Glenn. Touching on his fierce drive to climb back up the noble ranks, Colin boldly drops the Marquis before leaking just a tiny spark of his magic. He swears up and down that he is nobody special, just an average dude who somehow unlocked a vibe for the mystic arts. Given the ruler's god-tier status, a Grandmaster Archmage would normally swat a guy like him away like a cocky little bug. Yet this exact Grandmaster Archmage is standing there, completely mind-blown that a random commoner is out here bending mana. It seriously has him racking his brain trying to figure out what this kid's real deal actually is. Colin lays it on thick, declaring that the ruler standing right in front of him is the ultimate protector of the realm, the absolute goat of all Marquises. A boss who values raw, undeniable strength way more than some fancy family tree. Colin claims he is just hyped to get noticed, pledging that his ultimate endgame is to grind for the Marquis, so he can completely smash that toxic system of bloodline privilege into dust. Put simply, our boy wants to step up and evolve into a top-tier powerhouse lord just like him, all while secretly holding on to this wild, reckless dream of completely eclipsing the man. Colin confesses that since the Marquis dragged him from death's door twice, he is ready to go all out and crash the upcoming selection exam. Once that is done, the boss can wield him however he wants to secure his endgame. The sheer audacity of the kid is wildly amusing, so much so, it literally sends the Marquis into a full-blown fit of villainous laughter. Bro is genuinely shook and is fully banking on Colin to deliver some massive results. Granting his dismissal, the ruler drops one final curveball before letting him bounce. He demands the kid's honest take on a guy named Rowan. Colin instantly plays dumb, acting like the name means absolutely nothing to him. Buying the act, the Marquis just waves him off, without dropping any extra lore. As he watches the boy vanish, Darius Hall scrunches his face, low-key, wondering why that name even crossed his mind. He instantly summons his head butler Cornell, who was literally just lurking in the pitch-black shadows like a phantom. The loyal steward is dying to know whether the kid is just an average Joe or some kind of hidden prodigy. Judging by Colin's totally blank reaction, Darius assumes he really does not know Rowan, which straight up proves the kid is not actually from El City, like he claimed. He is totally capping, making the butler super paranoid that this whole thing is a carefully crafted trap. After all, they have been burned by a betrayal like this before. Rumor has it the Marquis' very own wife literally snaked him back in the day. Pushing that trauma aside, Cornell slides him a cryptic note, whispering that their intel network, Spirit Cat, just dropped some fresh tea. Darius gets a dangerous glint in his eye, insanely curious about what kind of dirt they dug up. Smashing cut to the next scene, our boy is chilling back at his crib, drooling over the epic loot he just bagged. We are talking rare crafting gear, heavy stacks of coins, and glowing elixirs. He basically flipped all his hard-earned monster drops into some top-tier survival gear, and with this insane haul, his combat stats are about to hit the stratosphere. But honestly, that random name Rowan is living rent-free in his head right now. He is racking his brain trying to pinpoint who the heck this guy is. The only other time that name ever popped up was when Daku mumbled it in his previous life. Besides that, absolute radio silence. but the heavy, intense tone the Marquis used made it feel like Colin was straight up expected to recognize him. Shaking off the paranoia, he tosses the strange orb right into his glass beaker, mentally pinning the question to interrogate Daku about later. Shifting gears, he aggressively mixes the ingredients together into a bubbling brew and downs the entire thing like a shot. Wiping his mouth, Colin immediately commands the ancient grimoire to awaken. The legendary relic erupts, scattering a glowing tornado of spell pages right in front of his eyes. Without hesitating, he starts slamming back more enchanted vials, tossing the empty glass aside, as he forcefully triggers a wild physical mutation. Locking in on his core energy, he screams out the absorption chant. Instantly, every muscle in his body locks up tight from the crushing gravitational pressure. A glowing blue screen pops up, confirming the mana surge, bumping his max mana capacity up by exactly 1 point. Honestly, this system is like the tragic anti-hero version of solo leveling. Catching his breath, Colin realizes that crushing fiery beast cores and mixing them with ultra-rare Jade Sovereign grass is the secret hack to expanding his mana pool. Well, at least that is what the cryptic pages told him. But here is the catch: even a cracked elixir like this caps out at a measly 3 stat points. Some drafts do not even give him a fraction of a boost. Pushing through the frustration, Colin is absolutely terrified of tapping out his mana and going berserk again. That is exactly why he is hyper-focusing on grinding his magical resistance before anything else. But real talk, he cannot deny that these glowing concoctions taste absolutely vile. His stomach is actively doing backflips, threatening to hurl. Sipping these awful drinks one by one is going to completely nuke his timeline. My guy is legit terrified he will perish on the toilet before he even levels up. He is desperately praying for a cheat code to speedrun this torture. Glaring at his pathetic mana bar, a massive warning suddenly flashes across his vision. The system just picked up the terrifying aura of a high-grade monster core right nearby. So, check this out. This glowing blue core, it's basically raw material for a top-tier magic artifact. Intrigued, our boy snatches up the crystal, ready to see what kind of cheat item he can forge. Swiping through his holographic system screen, sinking into a deep meditation, he follows the ancient spellbook's guide, summoning a massive golden phantom of the beast. He pumps a massive surge of raw power straight into the mana core, locking his mind onto the exact design he envisions. What's the ultimate flex here? Making a split-second choice, he crushes the crystal orb in his bare hand, forcing the magical energy to take a physical shape. The whole forging sequence is an absolute cinematic light show, slowly dying down as a shower of golden sparks drifts away. With a sudden chime, the system confirms a massive W. Wrapped perfectly around his left wrist is his brand new drop. Enter the Azure Bracelet and its passive skill, a totally overpowered trait called Wild Intuition. Plus, just keeping this thing equipped hits him with a solid buff, permanently bumping his mana pool by 1 single point. But wait to really push its limits. Our dude slams down another mana potion and boom! It straight up doubles the juice, giving him a 2-point boost instead. Yeah, you heard that right. That one piece of jewelry is literally doubling the efficiency of basic consumables. Talk about a broken multiplier. The stats are insane, but what he's really itching to test is that main ability, that Wild Intuition. Right on cue, his awareness skyrockets. The hairs on his neck stand up. He can actually feel something lurking right outside his door. Colin locks onto 2 distinct presences. They're just maids, but the sudden sensory overload spooks him so bad he practically yells out loud. It's like he just unlocked literal wall hacks, or better yet, a heat map for straight-up life energy. He peeks over at the guards and gets the exact same glitch in his matrix, seeing the whole world through this crazy neon thermal filter. Scanning the Marquis and Katrina, he notices blazing auras wrapped around them, a dead giveaway of their massive mana reserves. But catching him completely off guard amidst all that glowing energy, a creepy disembodied whisper echoes in his head.